You're live, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's call to order the city council meeting for January 12th. Our city attorney has an announcement before roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The procedures adopted for this meeting meet or exceed those standards set forth in Governor Gavin Newsom's order number N-25-20, allowing public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference in order to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Madam Clerk, please conduct the roll call, and afterward, I'll ask the mayor to recognize me to confirm certain matters for the record.
Will do. You're up.
Councilmember Perkins,
Here.
Councilmember Veros,
Present.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Here.
and Mayor Hudson.
Here. I recognize the city attorney again.
Thank you. Based on your responses to the roll call, the record should reflect that all council members can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each council member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that persons representing themselves to be council members here at this meeting are in fact council members.
I do.
Hearing no objection, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, with the reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Okay, thanks. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please mute, if you wish, your microphones, and I will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is a special business item. Oh, we can skip that. Item after that, oh no, we can't skip that. This is resolution number 2021-001, the first one of the year. City Clerk, you have something special for us.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and council members. On January 6, 2021, during a special city council meeting, the city council conducted interviews of 5 applicants in the format of a public candidate forum and voted to appoint Mark Armstrong to fill the vacant District 2 council term. Staff recommends adopting the resolution confirming the appointment of Mark Armstrong to the city council for a term expiring upon the certification of the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election results, and requesting that the city clerk notify the Contra Costa County Elections Department of the appointment.
Okay,
I move resolution number 2021-001.
okay. Motion
I can
Perkins,
second.
second Vice Mayor Zafar. And it says right here, staff report, Joe Gordon. Did I just bypass you and go right over your head to the boss? Okay. Are there any questions? Any public comment on the item? I see 48 attendees, but I don't see anybody wishing to speak to it. Okay, public comment going once, twice, 3 times. I have a Khalid Siddiqui and Alex Cooperman that want to speak under public comment. Can we let them in, City Clerk?
Yes, Khalid Siddiqui.
You have the floor, sir.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I have submitted a letter, but
Khalid, this public comment is for item 3.1.
oh, I apologize. I just joined late, so never mind. Continue on.
Mayor, you're muted.
Oh, Mayor Hudson, you're muted.
That way you can't hear me. Then we'll move to Alex Cooperman.
So just as a reminder to the public, this is for public comment on item 3.1 at this time. If you want to make public comment on any other item, it will be further on in the agenda.
Okay. Alex, you're up. And you're on mute, like I was. Let's give him a minute to get in. I'm sure it was a great speech. Oh. Okay, Alex, are you able to unmute? Seeing none. Okay, we're going to have to move on. This is for item 3.1, seeing no further attendees wishing to speak. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Perkins,
Aye.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Aye.
and Mayor Hudson.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes 4-0.
Okay. And we're down to a council roll call. Are we doing the administration of oath right now? Do we have some kind of special presentation on that also?
We do, yes.
Oh, we like the Spadowski shows.
I, Mark Armstrong, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter. So help me God.
Congratulations, Councilmember Armstrong.
Thank you very much.
Outstanding. Mark, where are you? Have we got him into the, are you into the real deal now? Okay, now you're gonna wish you hadn't done this. Okay, we're moving on to announcements. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none. If you wish to speak under public comment or regarding an item, please click the raise your hand button on the computer or *9 on your telephone to request to speak when public comment has been taken on the agenda. As somebody, I think two people noticed, this is not the regular public comment item. You'll also have an opportunity to speak to that. But our next item up after I do the announcement of boards and committees will be public comment on items not on the agenda. So also boards, committee, and commission meetings, a complete list of upcoming meetings may be found on the city website at www.sanramon.ca.gov. Public comment is now open. Now is the time for anyone in attendance, not the audience. We don't have anybody here, to address this council or staff on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak first? Anyone wishing to speak on tonight's agenda? I'm looking at attendees. We're going up, we're going down. I don't see any hands at this time. Do we have any written comments that we can run into the record, Madam Clerk? We are no longer reading the public comments. In this manner, we feel it's a better opportunity to give you longer, the full 3 minutes, if you wish to speak. I still don't see any attendees wishing to speak. We have how many public comments written?
The city council received 4 public comments that were provided to the council.
Okay, we'll put them into the record and we'll wait and see if staff can address them at some time after the agenda tonight. We cannot speak to them on the agenda. At this time, the public is permitted. That was what we just went through. Items are on the consent calendar, requests for future agenda items, items that are not on the agenda. Public comment is closed. Consent calendar items. These are generally routine in nature and acted upon with a single motion. And we have 14 of them. A particular note is item 6.14 before we make a motion to approve. I would like to make a, this is for, I'll make the statement about consent calendar item 6.14 in accordance with Government Code Section 54953C3, the employment contract between City of San Ramon and Martin License for services as city attorney includes the following terms: compensation increase to $234,000 annually, and all city benefits provided to other city department heads, with an increase from 2% to 3% in CalPERS employer contribution by Mr. License to align with the rest of the city employees. Do I have anyone wishing to pull an item? Mr. Perkins.
I was going to move the entire consent calendar 6.1 through 6.14.
Motion Perkins. Do I have a second?
I can second.
Second, Vice Mayor Zephyr. Did I get it right? No, it's close. Okay, is there any discussion by the council on these items? Seeing none, can I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes, that's 5-0. There are no special presentations outside of the very special presentation we had 5 seconds ago by new council member Armstrong. Welcome, by the way. There's no deferred consent calendars or adoption of ordinances, no city council appointments. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have 4 different minutes. We can do this with a single motion, 11-1 through 11-4. Is there anyone wishing to pull an item, any additions, corrections, or motions?
I can
Come on,
move
Sridhar, it's your-
11. Anyone wanting to pull? Otherwise, I can move
What?
11-1 through 11-4.
Motion Zafar, second,
Okay.
second Veros. Got to get you in here. Your turn's coming too. You're not going to hide anywhere, Mark. We'll find you. Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Armstrong.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Aye.
and Mayor Hudson.
Aye. There's no unfinished business tonight. We're on to item 13.1, which is the annual audit report for the city of San Ramon for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Our recommendation will be to accept the report, but the introduction will be by Finance Division Manager Candace Daniels.
Good evening, Mayor Hudson and members of the council. You should have before you the annual audit for the period ending June 30th, 2020. Back in March 24, 2020, we contracted with the new auditing firm, Ike Bailey LLP, to move forward with doing the city annual audit from fiscal years 1920 through fiscal years 22-23. We went through the audit process starting last June with them. We did the mid-year audit, and then we finalized the audit in October. And the CAFR was prepared and finalized by the end of December. So everything went well with the audit. We had a clean audit. So I will go over some of the general fund highlights. So starting with the revenue, we ended the year with revenues that were 2.2 million less than the final budget for the following reasons. Of course, there was a large impact because of COVID-19. So the taxes were $2 million below budget, reflecting decreases in property transfer tax, transient occupancy tax, and also franchise fees. Licenses and permits were 200,000 below budget, reflecting the decrease in building permits, which was due to the COVID-19 shelter-in-place shutdown. Intergovernmental revenue was 1.2 million above budget, which was reflected in money that we received from the state for the coronavirus relief fund, which was allocated to cities. Charges for services, that was 400,000 below budget, which, reflected decreases in inspections, plan check fees for development projects. Fines and forfeitures were 100,000 below budget, which reflected a decrease in vehicle code fines. Investment income, we had 200,000 above budget because we had favorable investment market adjustments. Miscellaneous revenue, we had $1 million below budget, which was also due to the COVID-19 shelter in place, primarily in parks and community services. So for the expenditures, they were kept within spending limits by 3.1 million, which is really good. We had an ending general fund balance of 15.3 million. I apologize, that should actually be 15.3, not 15.2, which was a net increase of 1.5 million due to vacancy savings and effort to keep expenditures down by all departments. So the ending reserve balances for the general fund, 15.3, and the debt service fund was 9 million, ending in 24.3 million. So now we have with us also Ahmad Garabai from Ike Bailey. He's one of the partners there, and he's going to go over some highlights of the audit.
Thank you, Candace. Good evening. My name is Ahmad Garabai. I am the partner in charge of the audit. I do have a PowerPoint presentation here with me. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen here really quick. Okay, great. So this is the comprehensive annual financial report for the city. The scope of the audit is to ensure that the city's financial statements, comprehensive annual financial report as of June 30, 2020, is presented in accordance with GAAP. Our scope is to ensure that these financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards.
We can see your screen and the notes. Do you mean to do that?
I apologize. Here, let's do this here. I don't think I have any notes in there, but can you see my screen here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Scope of the audit again is to form and express an opinion on whether the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. These financial statements are the responsibility of management. Our responsibility is to plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance as to whether these financial statements are free of material misstatements. You're a government, so we always look at the internal controls that is a requirement by government auditing standards. We look at the manner that you process receipts, the manner that you process disbursements, the manner that you process payroll. We look at segregation with respect to internal controls, and we issue a report on internal control at the conclusion of the audit. I'm pleased to let you know that the financial statements are fairly stated. We issued a clean opinion. They call it an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. In accordance with government auditing standards, again, we're required to report to you whether we had any exceptions there with respect to the audit. We noted no deficiencies in the internal control, and we noted no instances of non-compliance. We did have a couple of restatements there to the financial statements, mainly relating to pension and some accrual of interest on some of the certificates of deposits of the redevelopment agency, which is a fiduciary fund. It's not within the general fund. Just quick financial highlights for the 2020 fiscal year. The statement of net position, it's basically a consolidation of all your funds and all your long-term items. It includes pension, it includes capital assets. It shows that the total assets is about 534 million. Most of it obviously would be capital assets. Cash and investments are at 109 million, and other assets are at 21 million. Liabilities, again, it's about 98 million, most of which is long-term items such as long-term debt at 43 million and net pension liability at 39 million. Other liabilities, which is basically accounts payable, vacation liabilities, insurance liabilities, are at 16 million. Net position, which is basically a net worth of the city, $450 million, $22 million below fiscal year 19. Some of it is due to the restatements that we had in the financial statements. Most of that equity is in the form of a non-spendable equity because it's in capital assets. There's some restricted equity in there for $77 million and an unrestricted equity in $21 million in total. These are the fund financial statements. This is on an individual fund basis. The previous slide was related to the entity as a whole or the city as a whole. General fund, the most significant fund in there, it does show that the fund balance is at 15.3 million, about $1.5 million increase over fiscal year 19. A new fund was opened this year relating to COP number 13, that it's a debt service fund, has a total equity or fund balance of 18 million. And then the capital improvement fund, its fund balance was 24.7 million, which is about $3.7 million increase over fiscal year 19. Other funds in there includes the internal service fund. It didn't have a significant change, about $0.98 million. Ending equity in that fund was 13.9 million. Fiduciary funds, these are funds in which you add with the city acts in the capacity of an agent or a fiduciary agent. They include some of the agency funds in there. It includes a former RDA as well. So these are presented separately. They're not included in the consolidation that I just explained a couple of slides ago. Auditor communication, again, we are independent. We are the external auditors. We are independent of the city. We have complied with all the requirements, ethical requirements by our Board of Accountancy. significant accounting policies. We had a bunch of GASBs, and they call them GASBs, which is Government Accounting Standards Boards. The accounting pronouncements that were applicable to this year or even next year that were postponed due to COVID. They issued a separate GASB just for that particular purpose, GASB statement number 95. And I'm calling out your attention with respect to significant estimates. There are pension liabilities in there on the financial statements. We added the Doherty Regional Fire Authority. Net pension liability is required by the standard. That's one of the restatements that we had in there. So those two numbers on the financial statements are related to, do have a significant amount of estimates in there. Discount rate is the most significant in that particular area. Auditor communication, significant disclosures, again, sensitivity of the net pension liability, the discount rates, misstatements. This actually should be the couple of items that I just discussed relating to pension liabilities. And then we are required to tell you whether we had consulted, whether the city had consultation with other accountants. We noted none. And significant difficulties. We interviewed and we met city staff, some of the city council members as well during the interview process. And then within a month, COVID hit. And we were able to do the audit remotely. Management has been very cooperative. We received all the information in an electronic format. So we were able actually to complete the audit. Most of the audit interviews that we did with the city were over Zoom or whichever video conferencing that we used over there. And we actually didn't encounter any difficulties in the performance of the audit. And we're required to tell you whether we had disagreement with management. Management, again, has been very cooperative, and we had no disagreements with management. And with that, I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Okay, now's the time for clarifying questions. We'll start with Vice Mayor Zafar. Do you have any questions of staff for the presentation?
Could you a little bit expand again on the pension for the fire district? Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that required having that included in the financial statement. So City of San Ramon sponsored in the past a fire district, and that fire district was dissolved. But the contributions related to pension for past services, for vested retirement of existing employees continues on for the city. And then a couple of years ago, I think the governor had signed an assembly bill actually saying that whenever the JPA is formed, the agencies that formed that JPA are liable for those pension liabilities if that JPA is dissolved. So the combination of those two factors, that bill is recent. I mean, that bill was signed in late 2018. So the combination of both factors, we alongside with the city management, we thought that it would be appropriate to include that pension liability because you are responsible for those contributions. You're not at 100% responsible. I believe it's like 40% or 50%. I can't remember that percentage.
Right, 42%.
42%.
For clarification, Sabina, this DERFA was a joint Dublin-San Ramon. Actually, the last meeting that I attended, the chair was Mayor Guy Houston. If that puts it into perspective how old this is. But anyway, any further questions before I move on to Councilmember Armstrong? If you have any questions or comments, well, we'll get comments later.
The only comment I have is, we can see the impacts of COVID here, but I was pleased to see that there's no difficulties in dealing with the staff or the management. There's a lot of good detailed work that went into this by the staff and by Ide Bailey. And it certainly gave me some insight into our day-to-day operations and how the city is being run. And I think from what it appears to me that the city is being run wisely and efficiently and conservatively. So well done to the staff, this report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Perkins.
No questions, but I wanted to ask that on, it's on packet page 177, which is page Roman numeral 9, which is the organization chart. And I've mentioned this in the past, I think. but I'd like to see the auditor located on that page. The auditor works for the city council, and I think that distinction needs to be identified whenever we have an organization chart in a document. So we have boards, committees, and commissions. We have the city manager, we have the city attorney, and I'd like to see a block over there that says auditor. And you can put the name of the audit company in there, but to me, that's always been significant. That the city council, we don't have a CPA amongst us. And so we the council hire an audit firm to do that for us. And so while some people may think that the audit firm works for the finance department, they don't. They work for the council. And so I do appreciate very much of the work that our staff goes through to make the documents available to the audit firm, and then the audit firm works through those as well. And so I know it's a joint effort by the finance department and the auditor, but ultimately the auditor works for the council. And so I'd like to see that reflected in organization charts wherever they show up, in presentations to new council members or in Government 101 or wherever it is. But I do want to thank both the finance department and the auditor for an excellent job on this document, on our audit, and well done. Thank you very much.
Thank
Member
you.
Perez?
Make a note of what you said about the org chart.
Thank you.
We'll
I just
probably
want to,
discuss it at the retreat. Go ahead.
I just want to appreciate our city staff for providing all required audit material to Ahmad and his team during this COVID event. So thanks for great work.
Thank you.
Okay, public comment on this item is open. I got an email, I believe, from Helen that she couldn't get in on *9, city clerk. It isn't there? Okay, well, we do have one person that wished. First of all, do we have any written? I'll get that out of the way first.
We did
On
not
this.
receive any written comment on this item.
Yeah. I didn't see any either. Then we have an A. A wants to speak on this item. A, you're muted. I think we're having problems with the mute. We can't unmute him or her. Okay, let's see where we don't have any public. Well, we pretty much, I'm sorry, A, we're not getting you on this. Okay, let's move on, and maybe on public comment, he can come back in and discuss it. We'll have a lot of latitude on that one. We have had discussion. Is there any further comments? If not, there's no council action required. We'll just accept the report and thank staff for another wonderful job and making us look good. I see no one raising their hand or wanting to do it. So thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item. I don't know, I'm a little leery on this one. This is item 13.2, an authorization for an exception to the 180-day waiting period. Staff report by Sarah Manastis.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm here today to request the authorization for an exemption to the 180-day wait period that is required under CalPERS law to bring back an annuitant. That's someone that's been retired from city service. As you all know, after 34 years of service, our beloved Eva has decided to retire. We have started the recruitment process to replace that position, but it will not be completed. It does take some time. We have received 144 applications, 113 people actually completed them. 15 people have been interviewed. We actually have a meeting tomorrow to talk about our top candidates, and we'll be interviewing people in February. And then it'll take, a few months for someone to get onboarded. However, during that time, we have some very important work that still needs to get done. Specifically, coordinating the mid-year 2021 budget, as well as the 5-year forecast, and starting the 21-22 budget. So we are looking to bring Eva back temporarily as we're in this kind of push to get a lot of these big projects completed on time and while we recruit. So I leave it up to you.
How are you going to interview 144 people?
We're not.
What, an hour and a half each?
No, that's how many people are interested in coming to the city to be the ASD director. We are working with a consulting firm. They've narrowed it down to 15 candidates that they have done preliminary interviews with. They're going to present all of them to us being even myself tomorrow, and we will pick the top 7 or 8 or so that will go to a day of panel interviews that will have 2 sets of panels. So we're doing our due diligence to get the best for the city.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, it's this time we ask for clarifying questions of staff, starting with Vice Mayor Zafar. Do we think this person's qualified? What your comments or questions?
I don't know, Joe and Sarah are doing something great that we have such a pool of candidates that are applying to the city, and the position's opened up after 34 years. So I think there was a big shoes to fill. I just want to say thank you for, really making it a great place to work where people want to come and work. I don't know if we'll be able to replace Eva, but we'll be able to add on to the wonderful work she's done.
Continue her good work.
Yes. Okay, Councilmember Armstrong, do you know Eva?
I didn't know Eva, but I will
drove her
say
away.
Anybody who spends 34 years in service to the government, just my hat's off to you. Just thank you for your willingness to stay on board and until the transition is complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Perkins? I'm just going across my screen. This is the way, there's no special order here.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful that Eva is willing to come back and help out through this transition. That's fabulous. It'll make a big difference for the person that fills that seat, that they will have somebody as qualified as Eva to help them through. I was talking with Joe the other day. There is no good time to bring a new administrative services director or a finance director on. You're either dealing with mid-year, you're dealing with the new budget, you're dealing with the old budget, or you're dealing with the audit. There is no good time. So I'm very grateful that Eva's willing to come back and help out to the next 960 hours in this fiscal year. So thank you, Eva.
Member Veros? We
I
can
know
change
that
that to 960 days.
I know that San Ramon is the best place to live, but now we know that San Ramon city is best place to work also. It's like 100 plus applications. That's amazing.
Now this is what you call getting a real softball on your first day out, Member Armstrong. If you can't figure out which way to go on this resolution, don't come back. No. Okay, let's open up the public comment. Do we have any written on this? I'm doing it in reverse order, but I know we don't have any. Any of the attendees wishing to speak to this? Since we haven't had a lot of luck on that. Let me see. A panelist, I have one. Oh, that was from Sridhar. And I assume you have spoken. Okay, let's close the public comment. If there's no further discussion, let's see who wants to dive out there first and make the motion for this resolution 2021-20.
I'll move resolution 2120-020.
I can.
Yeah.
I
That's
can
good.
second.
They can read it. We got a first from Perkins, a second from Vice Mayor Zafar. Any discussion? Seeing none, can you do the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's 5-0. Thank you very much. I think we're on to the, let me take a look at time. Oh yeah, we got plenty of time. Let's move to the next item, 13.3. This is resolution 2021-21, designating Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Lane. This is a temporary permit parking area. We have a staff report from Lisa Bobadilla. somewhere. Oh, Lisa, you've changed. PJ, are you doing this?
Lisa will take the lead. Thank you.
Okay, you're up, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Hudson, council members, city manager, Santa Ramon staff, and Santa Ramon community members. The item before you this evening is a recommendation to designate Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Lane, and Pearlgrass Court as temporary permit parking area R for a 12-month period under the city's residential permit parking program, restricting parking without a valid permit. These 4 streets are within the Travari community. Staff has prepared a presentation that is included in your packet this evening. We will provide you with a summary of the issues that have transpired over the course of the last 5 months, provide you with background information, a timeline of events that have transpired, provide you with the parking study information, the observations that have taken place, and also the options that have been considered by the Transportation Advisory Committee, or the TAC. I will lead tonight's presentation with PJ Dute, the city's transportation specialist, providing information on the parking occupancy study, as well as on-site observations. As with many items that come before the City Council, they are typically a collaborative effort. This endeavor is no different. Several staff members representing different departments and different divisions have provided information and have been a part of the work leading up to tonight's council meeting, as well as preparing information for the Transportation Advisory Committee. Staff from the Planning Division, Traffic Engineering, the Police Department, specifically the Traffic Patrol Division, are all available tonight to provide you with follow-up info if needed. I also want to acknowledge the 7 Santa Ramon community members who are members of the Transportation Advisory Committee. They have participated in over 3 meetings and have developed a recommendation for council's consideration this evening. So before we start with the PowerPoint presentation, I do want to articulate to the City Council that temporary or permanent permit parking is not new to the city of San Ramon. We have permit parking zones throughout the city. California High School, for example, in South San Ramon, a quarter mile around California High School has permit parking. The majority of that permit parking was actually established prior to the city's incorporation in 1983. Today, the permit parking hours in the Cal High zone are 7 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. Weymouth Court, which is off of Broadmoor Drive in South San Ramon, has permit parking 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The most recent area with permit parking is the Campton community. Temporary permit parking was established in the Campton community due to overflow parking from a neighboring community. After 12 months of temporary parking, it was decided by all parties, the city council agreed, and the neighboring HOA, as well as the community, to make the Campton community permanent. So it went from temporary permit parking to permanent permit parking, authorized and approved by the City Council. So the process to establish temporary permit parking for the Travari community is similar to what has been implemented in other parts of the city in the past. While the circumstances are different and they're unique to each situation, the process to establish temporary permit parking is similar. It should be noted that city staff does not initiate permit parking. In summary, the process includes the city staff receives a request from a neighborhood, a homeowner association, or a resident. City staff presents that information to the Transportation Advisory Committee. Community meetings are typically held to ensure that residents understand how permit parking works. City staff reaches out to neighboring communities, neighboring homeowner associations to inform them of what has been requested and what permitting entails. We circulate a petition. The petition is circulated by city staff. This year, the petition was different. We did an online petition. We submitted it to the Travari HOA manager, and they submitted the online petition to the homeowners within the Travari community. In the past, the petition has been mailed to residents within an area. This year, because of COVID, we did an online petition. We do require that homeowners meet the city criteria, and that is 75% of the homeowners in the affected area for permit parking must agree and sign the petition. City staff conducts data gathering, both internal and external, and we conduct parking studies and conduct observations. We present all of our findings to the Transportation Advisory Committee. We present a recommendation or recommendations to the Transportation Advisory Committee. We forward the recommendation, if there is one, from the Transportation Advisory Committee to the city's policy committee. From the policy committee, we forward a recommendation to the city council, which is why we are here this evening. There is a formal recommendation to establish temporary permit parking in the Travari community by the Transportation Advisory Committee. It has gone to the policy committee, and it is there before you this evening for your consideration. So with respect to the Travari temporary permit parking, there is a PowerPoint presentation that is in your packet this evening. I will defer to the city clerk to pull that PowerPoint presentation, and we'll start on page 2 of the PowerPoint presentation. So to provide you with timeline on what has transpired thus far, on August 10th, the city staff received a request from the Travari HOA manager to address a parking situation within the Travari community. According to the Travari HOA manager, the Travari HOA Board of Directors expressed concerns about overflow parking coming from a neighboring community. The Travari HOA board members articulated that they have tried unsuccessfully to discuss the overflow parking from their perspective from the Mirabella community. Therefore, the Travari Board of Directors directed the Travari HOA manager to contact the city. On August 14th, city staff sent an email to the Mirabella HOA manager to discuss the parking situation. On August 17th, I received an email from Scott Slaubaugh, who is the Mirabella HOA manager. He asked me to contact him on his cell phone or his direct line. I contacted him. We had a very cordial conversation, and I articulated to Mr. Slaubaugh that we had received a request from the Travari HOA Board of Directors to address overflow parking. From their perception, it was coming from the Mirabella HOA. I informed Mr. Slaubaugh that it was likely that the city would discuss permit parking consideration at upcoming Transportation Advisory Committee meetings, and that at some point, depending on the direction from the Transportation Advisory Committee, city staff would likely recommend that we sit down with the Mirabella HOA board members and discuss the parking situation. On September 9th, city staff attended a Travari HOA board meeting at the request of the Travari HOA manager. The board members were very vocal about advocating for permit parking immediately. Staff articulated to the board members that we do not have the ability to approve permit parking, that there is a process in place, and the process that I described to you earlier is the process that we articulated to the Travari HOA board. We informed the HOA board that we would need to follow the process, and when and if there was a recommendation by the Transportation Advisory Committee, we would forward the recommendation to the City Council for review and consideration. September 16th through the 19th, we conducted observations. October 5th through the 12th, we submitted the online permit parking petition. Again, it was submitted by the Travari HOA manager. We received 92% of the homeowners within Travari who agreed to permit parking. Again, our policy is 75%. Within Travari, we received 92%. October 7th and October 20th, staff sent an email to the Mirabella HOA manager requesting a meeting with the Mirabella HOA board. On October 15th, the Transportation Advisory Committee, which is the regularly scheduled meeting. As you know, the TAC meets the third Thursday of every month. This was the regularly scheduled meeting. And due to COVID, staff recommended that we have the community meeting during the TAC meeting. Therefore, we invited Travari homeowners to attend the October 15th Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. It was online via Zoom. It was staff's intent to describe how permit parking works, and we wanted to ensure that the residents understood how permit parking works. We also articulated to the community members that permit parking would also apply to Travari homeowners. If a Travari homeowner were to park in an area within their community without a permit, they would also be subject to a citation. On November 20th, TAC forwarded 3 recommendations to the Transportation Advisory Committee for their consideration. Let me take a step back. At the October 15th Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, we had about 40 attendees attend that meeting. On November 20th, we had approximately 25 residents attend the meeting on November 20th. At the November 20th TAC meeting, after considering 3 different recommendations by staff and taking public comment, the Transportation Advisory Committee recommended on a 5-2 vote, temporary 12-month permit parking for the Travari community. On December 10th, staff was invited to attend a Mirabella HOA board meeting. 4 city staff members attended the Mirabella HOA board meeting. On December 16th, staff presented to the policy committee the Transportation Advisory Committee recommendation to move forward with temporary 12-month permit parking. With that, I'll move on to the next slide. I'd like to talk briefly about the Travari community and the Mirabella community. The Travari community was actually a development that was approved by the City Council in 1987. It has 84 single-family homes, 2-car garage, 2-car driveways for all of the 84 homes. All of the roadways within the Travari community are open to the public: Azalea, Fuchsia, Pearlgrass Lane, and Pearlgrass Court. Next slide, please. Thank you, Christina. The Mirabella community. The Mirabella community was approved by the City Council in 1991. Mirabella includes 176 townhomes. Each townhome has a 2-car garage with no driveway, except for 36 of the townhomes. Those 36 townhomes have a 2-car garage. All of the roadways within Mirabella are private. In 1991, during the Planning Commission approval, and then later with the City Council approval of the development, it was the understanding of the Planning Commission that Mirabella would provide 96 parking spaces in total for the community. 44 of those parking spaces would be dedicated to on-site guest parking. 52 of those parking spaces would be open for resident parking. Today, all 96 of the parking spaces are allocated as guest parking. Homeowners within Mirabella, to our understanding, are not allowed to park within any of the 96 parking spaces. It is staff's belief that it is at the discretion of the Mirabella HOA board to open up or to allocate some of the 52 surplus parking spaces for the residents within Mirabella. Next slide, please. Public communication. As of January 8th, last Friday, the city has received 18 letters of support for the temporary 12-month permit parking. 3 letters are opposing the temporary 12-month permit parking. A summary of the issues include Trevari residents. According to the Trevari residents, they have been dealing with overflow parking for the last 10 years. The Trevari residents have also articulated that there is a deterioration of quality of life with constant on-street parking by residents. There is a difficulty with visibility and backing out of driveways or intersections due to high volume of on-street parking. There have been safety concerns raised by the Trevari residents with regard to parking, loitering outside of their homes, and cars coming in late at night looking for parking. The Trevari community, again, has requested that the City Council alleviate the parking situation within Trevari. On January 7th, the city received a presentation from the HOA manager of the Mirabella HOA board. That presentation is in your packet this evening. On January 7th, the city attorney's office received correspondence from the Mirabella HOA legal counsel. That document is also included in your packet this evening. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to PJ Duke. PJ will provide council with a summary of the observations and the parking study that has been conducted.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, council. So yes, we conducted a parking occupancy study to document and gauge the severity of the parking problem. As with any request our division receives, we go through a standard process of verifying and quantifying the issue so that we can develop the best solutions. And this typically includes on-site observations. We chose to conduct the observations on Wednesday, September 16th, as it was representative of a typical weekday in San Ramon. But just to verify that assumption, we also conducted multiple spot checks, 2 of which were documented on the following Friday and Saturday, just to make sure there wasn't anything unexpected. What we found was that the parking patterns were similar regardless of the day or time. So specifically, the parking study was conducted over a 5-hour period. Throughout that duration, staff observed parking in both the Trevari and the Mirabella communities. As the parking occupancy went from about 70% to 95% in Trevari, the parking occupancy at the neighboring Mirabella community went from roughly 40% down to 38% and back up to 43%. During the parking study, we observed folks parking within Trevari and walking into Mirabella, and we observed folks parking in Trevari and being picked up by other vehicles. During the study, we also observed vehicles with parking citations still intact on their windshields. So there was really a lot of activity taking place during those 5 hours. With that, Christina, next slide, please. So this is the spreadsheet that was included in the packet. It details the parking by hour. If there are any specific questions, we can take those at the end. The following slide also has a map that is associated with these zones. Christina, if we could just see the map on the next slide. What I want to draw your attention to on this map is really Zone 1 and Zone 2. So just to take a look at this, if you look at Zone 1 represents Red Willow Road. Red Willow Road basically divides all of Mirabella, which is to the south, called Zone 8. And then everything to the north of that is the Trevari community. So as we move further along, you'll notice that the proposal tonight for permit parking excludes both Zone 1 and Zone 2. And Zone 2 is the main entrance into the Trevari community. Great, thank you. And then with that, I think we will move on to a couple of pictures in the following slides. So here, just want to draw your attention. This is Red Willow Road. Again, the road I just told you about, Zone 1. This is 3 p.m. looking eastbound. At this point, it was almost full, but there are still some parking spaces. Next slide, please. And then we have Wednesday the 16th, again, 3 p.m. throughout the community. We have Azalea Lane in the first picture. It's completely full. This is the east side. We have 4 p.m. Azalea Lane on the west side. There is still 1 parking space. And then we have Azalea Lane at 6 p.m. and you can see both sides of the street are completely full. Next slide, please. This is Azalea Lane at 6:30 in the morning. Again, the west side is still full. The east side, 2 vehicles or 3 vehicles have left at this point. Next slide. And then we have 6:30 a.m. on actual Azalea Lane looking down the cul-de-sac. It seems like 1 parking spot has opened. But that orange vehicle you see in the first picture, that's a closer view in the second picture. And this is where in the staff report, I share with you that some residents have found creative ways of parking. So legally they would be parking parallel to the curb, but in this case, to squeeze in more vehicles because of a lack of on-street parking, the residents have actually parked perpendicular, which allows them to park 2 additional vehicles. Next slide, please. And then here we have Pearl Grass Lane, 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, 6:30 a.m. on a Friday. Wednesday, you can see there's still a parking spot available. In the morning at 6:30, it looks like that vehicle came in late at night as it's been there for a while. Next picture. And then this is Pearl Grass Court. The cul-de-sac is nearly at capacity. Next slide. And then this is Fuchsia Lane. And this is again the same day on Wednesday the 16th at 3 p.m. and then at 7 p.m. And you'll notice some vehicles shift, but primarily what happens is by 7 p.m. It's full as far as the eye can see. And next slide, please. And then this is just taking you on a tour of the Maravilla community. What we did observe is that the 96 parking spaces within Maravilla are not actually individually stamped as guest parking or resident parking. So there's no kind of designation in terms of stenciling, but they do have no parking tow away zone signs throughout the community that state that all parking spaces are for guests only. Next slide, please. And this is what most of the residences or the majority of the residences within Maravilla look like. They are townhomes that have a 2-car garage. However, most of them do not have any driveway. So what you'll see here is just a little apron right in front of the driveway or in front of the garage, I mean. And I think there are 2 more slides here that show you just what a typical day in Maravilla. We see some open parking spaces. 1 vehicle has occupied a spot. And I think there's 1 more slide. Yep, again, open spaces. So what's different in Maravilla, and the reason why we called it all Zone 8 is because they're guest parking, those 96 spaces, they're really spread apart throughout the community. So you'll notice, you know, a bunch, maybe 4 of them in one location, 3 in another, 2 in another. So that's why these pictures are in that order. Next, please. This is close to the main entrance of Maravilla. So again, there's roughly about 6 parking spaces around this little landscaped area, and 1 vehicle is occupying those spaces. And with that, I think I will get back into the discussion. So I did want to share with you that we are proposing the permit parking, as Lisa said, on a temporary basis, 12 months to be exact. The hours presented are 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. This time really gives residents, visitors, delivery trucks, unrestricted access to the street for most of the day. What we're really trying to target with the hours is that overnight residential and extended parking that's taking place. Therefore, these hours are best balanced to meet the needs. We did receive requests from Travari residents to implement 24/7 permit parking, which we do have in other areas of the city, but we thought it makes sense to compromise and pursue a balanced approach. But of course, since this is temporary, we will monitor the impact of the hours and possibly make adjustments if this is brought back to the City Council in 12 months' time. And that's the real benefit of this being a temporary proposal, right? We know if we need to, we can adjust the hours. We can gauge the COVID influence, you know, what is the true impact, how many vehicles will return back to work or college campuses once COVID is over. And then also we can observe any transference to other communities and then share that information with the TAC and the City Council as needed. As for the affected streets, we're excluding zones 1 and 2, as I pointed out earlier. So all of Red Willow Road, which runs between the 2 communities, will continue to accommodate roughly 31 vehicles at any time of day. And then we're also including the entrance to Travari along Azalea Lane, as these are residential side yards. And we've typically kept this policy, even in the Cal High zone, that we don't permit park side yards just to make parking available. And so Azalea Lane can accommodate another 9 to 10 vehicles. So these 2 parking zones will remain unrestricted and continue to accommodate up to 40 vehicles. In terms of the signage, we are reducing the typical signage down to just 4 signs, 2 at each entrance to the community. You may be used to seeing more signs in permit parking zones, accompanied by curbside stenciling. Since this is a trial run, we really want to start with a minimal. And if we do get feedback from whether it's residents or the police department saying that we need to beef up signage or stenciling, we can always do it at a later date. But being a trial, we didn't want to go in there with too much. So some of the direction we received from the policy committee was to ensure that sufficient notice was given to both communities to avoid any surprises or unnecessary citations. Therefore, we developed a plan that includes direct letters to each resident, a frequently asked questions fact sheet, and we've also developed the placement of temporary barricades with laminated outreach information and our phone number for direct communication. And of course, as we did from the beginning of this request, we will reach out to the HOA managers for both communities and partner with them on the outreach and the notification. So with that, Lisa, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
You're up.
Thank you. Christina, there we go. Thank you. So we're nearing the end of the presentation. Thank you again, PJ, for your comments. So these are the options that were reviewed by the Transportation Advisory Committee. There were 3 options reviewed. Option 1 is the installation of temporary permit parking for a 12-month period. This option requires City Council resolution. This option provides time to evaluate the effectiveness. It does require signs to be installed, as PJ mentioned. However, we will not do any stenciling on curbs within the Travari community. It will require that households obtain permits. They would need to go to the police department, obtain their permit anytime between January 13th through January 26th. This option is going to require San Ramon Police Department enforcement. The start date that we are proposing is January 26th, with the sunset date of January 26, 2022. As PJ mentioned earlier, the temporary permit parking gives staff time to evaluate the impacts, especially with COVID. Throughout the entire city, with more people working from home, students are not in school, college students are home, parking has expanded throughout the city. We want to be able to provide temporary permit parking, and it gives us time to see where the parking restrictions and where COVID over the course of the next few months, if any of the stay-at-home orders are lifted, does that have an impact on the parking situation? As PJ mentioned, we will coordinate the temporary permit parking with the Mirabella HOA. We will also coordinate that with the Travari Homeowners Association. We will look at whether or not the restricted hours of permit parking 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. is effective, and look at any displacement of vehicles into other surrounding communities. This was the TAC recommendation. This option was approved on a 5-2 vote on November 20th by the Transportation Advisory Committee, followed by the Policy Committee recommendation on a 2-0 vote on December 16th. The next option reviewed by TAC was to install permanent permit parking. Again, permanent permit parking does require City Council resolution. It requires signs to be installed. It will still require all households to obtain permits. It will require San Ramon Police Department enforcement. The start date would be January 26th. However, this would be permanent. And so based on the TAC recommendation and due to COVID and the parking demands that we currently have in place, TAC was recommending temporary 12-month permit parking. The last and final option reviewed by TAC was to leave it as status quo. Leaving it as status quo would require no cost to the city, no San Ramon Police Department enforcement. However, it should be noted that with the overflow parking in the Travari community, there have been calls to the San Ramon Police Department and calls into the neighborhood enforcement. And those calls are all related to vehicles blocking street sweeping and or garbage, trash bins not being able to be picked up with cars parked in the Travari community. So those are the 3 options that have been reviewed by the Transportation Advisory Committee. So in conclusion, this evening, staff recommends in concert with the Transportation Advisory Committee that the City Council designate Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearlgrass Lane, and Pearlgrass Court as temporary permit parking area R for a 12-month period under the city's residential permit parking program, restricting parking without a valid permit between the hours of 7 p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. With that, that concludes the staff presentation. PJ and I and other members of our team are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, staff. And now it's time for council clarifying questions. We have discussion later or comments later after public comment. But right now, are there any clarifying questions? Member Perkins.
Yeah, Lisa or PJ, have you considered the impact, let's see, street sweeping is what I'm getting at, of changing the hours, or can we get street sweepers in there before 7, or do we want to make the time 7 p.m. to 8 a.m. so that street sweepers can access that, or have we even talked to the street sweeping team?
No, we haven't talked to the team, but we can certainly, the street sweeping is within the Public Works Department. When, we also, PJ and I work within Public Works, we can certainly talk to the team about changing the street sweeping schedule. But based on our observations and based on feedback by the Travari residents, the most heavily impacted times are 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Right. Well, I understand that, but if people start parking at 7:15 and street sweepers come at 9, then we haven't solved that problem. Okay. Have we talked with the police department about opportunities to get permits during non-business hours? Can we work with them to schedule a time maybe on Saturday the 23rd where people can come and get their permits?
That will be a decision that will need to be made by the police department. The hours are 8 to 5 at 2401 Crow Canyon Road. Lieutenant Williams is also on the line. I don't want to put her on the spot, but that's something that we can certainly reach out to PD and determine whether or not that would be available to the residents of Travari. And if so, we can articulate that to the community members.
Okay, that's the only questions I had.
Member Burrows, do you have any questions of staff?
Oh, no, I don't
Policy Chair Burrows, do you have any questions of staff?
I don't have any questions, but one thing I just want to mention that regarding your communication, you're going to send direct letters as well as you're going to communicate with HOA. That's perfect. And during our policy committee meeting, I think I mentioned that let's try to do as much communication as possible. Over communication is okay in this case. So let's try to utilize all social media outlets and so that we can communicate the best.
Member Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you. Because this issue applies to publicly owned streets, I'd like to hear from the city attorney on just what the city's role is within the municipal code for matters like this.
Okay, do you want to take it now, or would you like to see if Vice Mayor Zafar has another one for you?
Okay.
I had a similar question, so
Okay.
I'll just, yeah.
Well, the municipal code sets forth the city's options and its obligations regarding parking on public streets. Specifically, B8-11 says that the city council may establish permit parking areas within the city in order to alleviate motor vehicle congestion caused by short-term and long-term parking by non-residents in a specific neighborhood. So the council does have authority to establish permit parking provisions. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does answer the question that we've got the authority and specifically the criteria for that in terms of safety or those types of matters.
Yes, those criteria are laid out farther down in the article. B8, I think 13 spells out specific criteria that need to be met in order for these restrictions to be imposed on a specific neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. And then I appreciate also the clarification that there's under this proposal that there's not going to be permits required on the streets in zone 1 and 2. So it's just those that are internal to the Travari neighborhood, as I understand it. Is that correct, Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Good.
Vice Mayor Zafar? I'm sorry, Mark, did you have another one?
No, it catches my ear a little bit here to hear about, our role as a city to protect the health and safety and welfare of the residents. And it's a very complex issue, but I appreciate all the work from the staff to go into this.
And save that for when we get into discussion. We'll probably be saying it again. Vice Mayor Zafar?
So do we have an idea of, with this permit parking, how many cars will be displaced? Was that part of the analysis?
Councilmember Savar, we estimate, and PJ can interject as well, anywhere between 30 to 45 vehicles. That's been based on our observation. That's about how many vehicles are parking in the Travari community that we believe would be affected by temporary permit parking.
Okay. And if in case these don't belong to Mirabella either, where would they go?
That's a good question. We don't know who they belong. If we don't know who they belong to, we're not sure where they would go. Some of them may be Travari homeowners as well. And we have articulated this to Travari homeowners. If a Travari homeowner has a 2-car garage and a 2-car driveway, that's 4, you can possibly park 4 vehicles. If they have 5 vehicles or 6 vehicles because a college student is home or their high school student isn't using the car to go to school, then they have 2 extra cars. So those additional cars could be parked within the Travari community, which is really why we want to do temporary, why the recommendation is temporary, to get an idea of who is parking in that community. Do they belong to Travari? Do they belong to an adjacent community? And then at the end of 12 months, when we do the evaluation, we will provide TAC with our observations and our findings from the evaluation.
Okay. So we don't have a good idea of where the spillover might happen. That's going to be part of the observations to see where kind of this goes.
Well, we do believe that any spillover parking in the Travari community or parking that's impacted by permit parking in the evening, we believe that the majority of those vehicles belong to Mirabella homeowners. And we also believe that there is parking available in the Mirabella community. Now, keep in mind, those are private streets, but based on the observations we've conducted, there is available, if you take away the 44 guest parking spaces, there still is about 50 plus parking spaces available in the Mirabella community. But we do not have discretion over allocating those parking spaces to Mirabella homeowners. That is at the discretion of the Mirabella HOA. Now, it did come to the TAC's attention that some of these vehicles may be displaced or they may encroach into the Altamira community, which is east of Doherty Road. That seems awfully far for people to walk, but that is something that we will be looking at during the 12-month temporary permit parking program.
Lisa, can you tell me the difference between the private streets and the public streets? Private streets is that they are all just parking. There's no like curbside parking and things like that, or what is the difference?
Well, the private streets in Mirabella, they're private streets. So the city has no authority to allocate parking or to distinguish whether or not there should be permit parking within the Mirabella community on private streets. We have a number of communities in San Ramon that are private streets. We have been, in the past, we have had homeowner associations contact us to install speed humps on private streets. Our speed hump policy does not apply to private streets. We will provide the homeowner association with our protocol and our policies, but it's up to the HOA to implement speed humps if they so choose to do on private streets. We can only, and according to the city attorney as well in the city's Muni Code, we can only suggest or recommend permit parking on public roadways. Those are roadways that the city owns and manages and provides maintenance on.
Okay, so we have no discretion. Yes, go ahead.
if there is any discretion, it's generally in the fire district's discretion.
Yeah.
To restrict things like parking for purposes of safety and access for emergency vehicles.
So basically, we have no discretion in the streets in Marabella, but we have discretion over the streets in Tawari. The other question I had was, so there's a time where you can pick up the permit. What if somebody doesn't pick up the permit during that time period between the 13th and the 26th? They can't have a permit then, or?
Well, if they are a homeowner in Tawari and they do not pick up a permit and they park their vehicle in a permit parking zone, there is the possibility that they will be cited. So if they do not get permits, for example, if a homeowner in Tawari chooses not to apply for permits and they can park all their vehicles in their driveway or in their garage, they don't need a permit.
And is there a limit on per household, how many permits will be issued?
No, there's no limit. PJ, you may want to interject on this. There is no limit, but we do limit the number of visitor passes. The limit for visitor passes is typically 2. If a homeowner wishes to request more visitor passes, they can do that. But with the shelter in place right now, typically people are not having a number of guests at their home because there is a shelter in place. And so we don't anticipate the Tawari homeowners seeking anything more than 2 visitor passes.
Okay, so these are going to be visitor passes, which whoever, parks their car needs to be a visitor of Tawari,
or they need to have a permit.
Okay.
So if a Tawari homeowner has 5 vehicles and 2 of them are parked in the garage and 2 are parked in the driveway, and their college student is home, and they're not, they're doing virtual learning from home and they have a car, they will need to have a permit. And that permit will be on, in the vehicle, demonstrating that they are allowed to park in the permit parking zone from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Okay. Member Perkins, you got your hand up.
Just to clear it, somebody buys a home in Tawari in March or April, they can still come in and apply for permits, right? I mean, we don't close the door on permits just because January 26th is come and gone. So even if they're a homeowner or they buy a home there, there'll still be time to get permits.
That's a good point. Yes, thank you, Councilmember Perkins. What we really want to stress to the Tawari homeowners is that after January 26th, if you are parked in a permit parking zone without a permit, you could be cited.
Right.
And what is it costing the city to do this?
Well, in the staff report, it's close to $1,100, and that's a cost that is borne by the police department. That includes the purchase of the permits, that includes the decals and the visitor passes. What we don't have in there are the staff time. There's cost associated with police department, administrative staff issuing the permits. If somebody comes in and they lost their visitor pass or they lost their permit decal, they need to come back to the police department. So those costs are all borne by the police department, but the initial cost to purchase the permits and the visitor passes is about $1,100.
And we're charging for this, or?
We are not charging, no.
We haven't charged anybody else. I believe that's a perfect lead in. That was the question. Nobody showed up at the policy committee meeting. That's not the major point that I'm getting at here. I asked the question because we made a recommendation from policy to the full council to take a look at what the Transportation Advisory Committee's recommendation was. And we more or less validated it through the policy committee. But I asked, are we going to spend the $1,100? We had a lead-in time for this, from my memory, that we should go ahead and do this before it went to council. So didn't we start, wasn't that part of the recommendation out of policy to go ahead and start getting these permits or whatever we need started so we'd be ready for the 26th? There was something about 12 days in there that I started thinking, should we be doing this before the council approves it, or you know what I'm talking about, PJ, or am I just getting old?
I completely know what you're talking about, and I will let Lisa lead the discussion.
Thank you. Mayor Hudson, yes, we did talk about a number of things at the policy committee. The 12 days is the amount of time that we're giving homeowners to go to the police department and access their permits. The signs, the 4 signs that PJ mentioned earlier this evening, the 4 temporary signs that we are going to install, those signs have been ordered, and those signs are included in that $1,100 fiscal analysis. Those signs have been ordered with the anticipation that we would implement temporary permit parking. Again, we are not doing any stenciling that we have stenciling in South San Ramon, a quarter mile around Cal High for permit parking. We are not moving forward with stenciling any part of the curbs within Trevari.
Okay, and one last question before I open up public comment. We'll go to the verbal first. I see 3 attendees already. If more want to jump in, please raise your hand or *9 or whatever it is, we'll get to you. We are not going to read the written emails afterwards, though I will probably read one of them. This permit parking that's going in so far is 7 to 7, and it may be if we pursue it to add something that allows you to have some additional time on that because of street sweeping or however you want to handle it. But it's my understanding that handicap parking is still permitted within this permit parking area. Yeah. That's a good nod. Okay, let's open up the public comment. I'm up to 8, 9. All right. We've instituted and we're climbing. We've instituted a policy where we're not going to read these things so we can give more time to attendees. I'm up to 11 now. I will make the same speech that I do 13 for everyone at public, 15, that you can have up to 3 minutes. I strongly suggest we're going to break in about 30 minutes anyway. I'll probably cut it off. That if somebody has brought up your points before, there's nothing wrong with taking less than 3 minutes. I know that, well, I'll deal with that when it comes up. So right now, public comment is open. Who do we have first on the list that of the attendees? I'm looking at the top. Let me get up here. I'll do it. How about Brad Kavanaugh? Is that about right, City Clerk? Okay, yeah. Brad Kavanaugh, please *9 or good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I unmuted. Everybody remember that. Yes, we've gone through this problem which has caused tremendous anxiety, daily stress, continued harassment from neighbors, and uncertainty among a lot of people in our neighborhood. It's culminated about 4 to 5 years ago when the parking became unbearable. I live on Pearlgrass Lane. We have never had a single night where there has ever been a parking space available on my street unless I park one of my cars to take that space. We have never had street sweeping in front of my house ever in 5 years unless my car is parked in front of the house and I wake up early and move my car, hoping someone won't park their car there and again prevent the street sweepers from sweeping. With that said, 40 to 60 cars park every night in our parking in our area and take up our stalls. I know that. I have spent a lot of time and all our neighbors have committed to letting us know which cars are not theirs. 20 to 30 of those cars, that's nearly half of them, park for 1 to 2 to 3 days at a time and only move when they get stickers on their cars to another part of our neighborhood. We've become the excess parking lot for Mirabella due to Mirabella's poor policies. This exists nowhere else in San Ramon. I have driven literally every street in San Ramon. It does not exist to this extent. When we went around to get people involved in their neighborhood, I had people with tears in their eyes thanking me that we might help relieve the anxiety and the continued stress of an overparked area. The safety for our children, competing for play space in a densely parked area is extremely dangerous. There have been confrontations and vandalism that have occurred regularly in our neighborhood. My neighbor across the street has had 4 of her tires put nails through them. I myself has had that twice. I filed a police report, but they told me there's nothing they could do about it. And 3 neighbors have been harassed by an individual, all for the same reason of them trying to squeeze an extra car in front of their house. The list is endless. It goes on, and it's been going on for well over 5 years. I think this is going to benefit by making this temporary parking both communities. And the reason being is they have, as you saw in that fantastic presentation by Lisa, a clear description of their neighborhood. I guess it was PJ maybe, that showed the pictures that there's not a single car parked on any one of their streets in an entire neighborhood that is twice
We got to
the size
cut you
of
off
ours.
right here. I think you made the point very clear. And I thank you. I forgot to tell the next speakers, if you would, I probably got Brad Kavanaugh right, but that's not going to run for 17 more speakers where I get all the pronunciation right. So I would ask that you repeat your name when you're speaking, and if you want to give your address, we'd appreciate it also. A little heads up, probably around 9 o'clock, I will ask to take a 5-10 minute break, and we will come back. I'm guessing that's going to be around Paul Lynch, but we will see how it goes. The next speaker is Siva Raja. Please unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. Hello, everyone. I am actually calling in from India. I came in on an emergency to India to visit my family, but this is such an important issue that I had to jump in and address the city council. Me and my wife, Shankari Kasi, we live at 304 Pearl Grass Lane, and we have been living there for the last 9 years. We live in zone 5 as per PJ's study, which is a wonderful study. This zone has 100% occupancy all the time. We face extreme difficulties. People park in front of my driveway, making it very hard to back up my car sometime. I have had missed accidents many times. People park in front of my driveway on garbage days. And I've had my garbage cans in front of my neighbor. He was gracious to accept that. And my street does not have straight curbs. It is curved in many places. In front of my house as well, it is a curved curb. People just park in a curved curb with their cars projecting out onto the road, just leaving space for one car to pass through. My kids are 9 and 18. My 9-year-old plays in the driveway, sometimes making it as a big hazard because oncoming cars cannot see him play. And cars are, parked in front of my area are a big nuisance because they come in the middle of the night and they park in front of my house and they walk. And it creates a huge security issue. We have had cars left there for months, and I have to call the police department to come and tow the car. And I have to keep watching who is parking and who is not parking in front of my house. Again, walking in my neighborhood is a nightmare with so many cars. I cannot walk along with my wife. There's so many blind spots, and we are really, really scared at night sometimes to walk around our house. So I emotionally appeal to the City Council to pass the parking permit approved by the San Ramon Transportation Committee and save us from the torture. We are really going through the torture. San Ramon, we bought house in San Ramon, believing that this is going to be a good community to raise our kids and live. But we are losing our hope. So please pass this. We are going through extreme anxiety and anguish. And I thank everyone for the time today.
Thank you, Siva. Our next speaker is Sanjay Agarwal. Sanjay, you can unmute, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Sanjay Agarwal. I'm a code consultant and I have lived here for more than 20 years. I'm a registered PE and I have worked on hundreds of projects in Bay Area. So first thing is, I really appreciate Lisa and PJ on their presentation, but I disagree with one thing. She said that the city does not have any authority for private streets. I would request the city attorney to check with the planning board, planning commission. Planning code has a requirement that every community is required to provide parking for their residents within the community. I have worked even on in your city center project, and look at before the planning commission approved the project, how much parking was required. So every project before it is approved, the planning commission looks at where people will park their cars, and it's required in the planning code. And actually, even so, as Lisa mentioned, that Triveri was built in 1987, and Miravilla was built in 91. And when the city approved that, they required Miravilla for certain number of parking spaces within the Miravilla community. And they're not following that. They are in complete violation of planning requirements. So based upon my experience, I can tell you, if you contact the fire department and let them survey this, they will say Triveri streets do not meet the fire code requirement for fire truck access. And I have lived here for 20 years. It is a complete nightmare. The streets have gone overcrowded. We cannot put our garbage cans outside because they are too close. The garbage company tells us, spread them out. There's no place to put it. Road hazard, streets are dirty. It's the same thing what you're seeing. But the condition of streets in our community have gone really bad. And as I said, the planning code requires every community to be self-sufficient for their parking needs. So I would request Mayor, Vice Mayor to support us. And in fact, our community is taking an additional burden on us by requesting this. The problem is really coming from the neighboring community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. The next speaker, I still can't get over is Siva's calling from India. I'm trying to figure out what time is it in the morning. Anyway, Sophia Lamiro, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, actually, for some reason, my daughter's name came up. This is Chris Lamero. I am a resident of Triveri, have been so for nearly 20 years, resident homeowner. I'd like to thank PJ and Lisa for their presentation. I think they well articulated the problems that we're facing. A couple of things that I'd like to point out. One is that, frankly, I don't think that Miravilla comes at this issue with clean hands, and that's been made clear through the PowerPoint presentation. A part of their conditions for development were allocating a certain number of parking spaces for resident parking. They have not. The conditions that exist in our community are such that I believe they amount to both a public and a private nuisance. And I reference California Civil Code section 3479 and 3480 as it relates to the definition of a nuisance. As to whether or not this is pursued as a private nuisance, the question becomes is whether or not there is some action on the part of Miravilla that affects the quality of life, the right to peaceful enjoyment of the property owners of Triveri. It certainly does. And there are damages that flow from that. And those damages amount to unsafe conditions, the ancillary problems of speeding through our streets at night, looking for available parking, trash left in the streets, which I have personally observed on many occasions, and most importantly, a diminution in value of our properties. Litigation is costly. It would be costly to members of both communities by way of special assessments for legal fees and special assessments for damages obtained by the prevailing party. We don't seek litigation. We reach out to our public officials. We ask them to use the powers that are available to them to abate this problem as a public nuisance rather than pursuing an action on the basis of private nuisance. One thing that I'd like to point out is I am completely baffled that Zone 2 is eliminated from permit parking. Zone 2 is one of the primary entry points of the Trevarry community, and it's one of the areas that has the greatest problem. Essentially, Miravia, because of their policies, they are using our community for overflow parking. They're also using it for long-term vehicle storage. It's a condition that's become untenable. It affects our quality of life. And so we reach out to you, our elected leaders, to help redress this grievance. With that, my time is running short. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Sophia, for us for getting you through to us. Our next speaker is Robert Trujillo. Robert, if you can unmute yourself. Still muted. You're still muted, Robert.
There we go. Okay.
There
now
you
can
go.
hear me. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, my name is Robert Trujillo. I'm on the board of the Trevarry HOA. And, you know, the Miravilla community is not entitled to use Trevarry public streets as their personal parking lot, you know, for their vehicles, you know, for 4 or 5 days at a time and longer, unless we call parking enforcement. They don't have the right to diminish and degrade our quality of life in our community. You know, we certainly have the right to enjoy our community homes and homes free of being harassed and put upon by Miravilla. You know, it's resulted in, as this has been mentioned, public safety issues because they drive at unsafe speeds in our community. They block handicap sidewalks, park in front of fire hydrants, around curbs, occasionally block driveways. The beauty of our community has been degraded because of all of these unwanted cars that stay on the street. And these cars are packed with stuff in them, and they just unsightly, and they just stay on the streets until, again, we have to call parking enforcement. It's ridiculous. It's severely diminished the quality of our life. Our enjoyment of peaceful feeling of living here because of the stress, frustration. It's just horrible. You know, many commercial vehicles park in Miravilla because they can't park they park in Trevarry because they can't park in Miravilla. They have a policy, anything after no community or no commercial vehicles after 5 p.m. And as I said, as was mentioned, our property values have been diminished. And just as we were sitting here listening to all what's going on, I've heard 2 or 3 cars up and down Fuchsia Lane, my street, revving their vehicles, their sound, their music blasting from their car. And I know exactly who these cars are. They do exactly the same thing almost every night. And it's ridiculous, you know, because Miravilla has forced their vehicles out of their community. You know, they're able to maintain a nice, pristine, uncluttered community, and it provides them a nice, beautiful quality of life, and at Trevarry's expense. You know, we are frustrated, we're angry, we're sick and tired, as you've heard, of this continued harassment by them. You know, and so we want this to stop. So I wholeheartedly request the City Council to approve our permit parking. And I just do want a shout out to PJ and Lisa. They've done a great job in preparing the presentations, coming out and seeing what is happening in our community that is being impacted by that other community. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. Our next speaker is Russ Ferguson. Russ, if you could unmute, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me.
I can.
First of all, welcome, Mayor Hudson. Appreciate your support on and listening to this issue. I did write a letter to the City Council, and I'll just bullet point. Appreciate the opportunity again. So there's a constant overflow of cars parked in our neighborhood, as evidenced by the data collected by PJ and the group. On numerous occasions, we have witnessed the following. And by the way, I'm a resident of Tervari on Fuchsia, neighbors with Robert, who just spoke. The cars in our neighborhood remain for days without moving, 3+ days. We've become the community police in reporting these. And I've had numerous conversations with the police officers, really trying to help counsel how we should deal with this. And we just keep reporting them, and they cite them. So cars on both sides of our streets created safety hazard, as was noted. People observed loitering in cars, playing loud music, speeding in and out. Again, redundant here. But I think I'll call to the council just a story of a Maravilla resident who knocked on our door, literally pleading for us to help us solve the problem. They park in our neighborhood because they have no place to park. They're cited 3 times in a month. This is per her. And then they're either fined or they're towed by their own HOA over in Miravilla. And she said, what can I do? I said, you must, figure this out. But the fact that there are 50+ parking spots that should be designated for those residents that are designated as guests, that would clear the problem. So the fact that the Miravilla residents are talking to us saying, please help us, I think this makes sense. This is the first step in solving the problem. So my family does not feel safe living in this neighborhood due to the earlier points made. For our own and our neighbors' safety, we strongly endorse, highly recommend implementation of permit parking for Tervari neighborhood. We believe that's the best solution. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Russ. Paul Lynch. Paul, if you can unmute, you're up. And we'll probably be taking a break after about 6 more.
Paul Lynch is using an older version of Zoom, so I'm going to have to promote him into the meeting. And after his 3 meeting minutes, I'll take him out. So hold on one moment.
Okay, Paul. You're unmuted. And it's your turn. Uh-oh. We don't have Paul?
He's in the meeting. He's unmuted.
Yeah. Paul, can you hear me? That one's going to be tough. No, we're not going to get Paul.
Okay.
We'll try one more thing. We'll give him one more shot. Paul, can you hear us? Okay, Paul, we're going to thank you for that great presentation and see if we can get you in later, but we want to keep going so that we can get everybody in. How about the Tervari resident? Would you identify yourself? You're on mute. You have the floor. Tervari resident. Uh-oh. Can you unmute? There you go.
Hello, this is Lori Ferguson. My husband just spoke, so I'm a Tervari resident. Can you hear me?
Yes. Very
Hi,
good.
this is Lori Ferguson. My husband just spoke, and I'm a Tervari resident. And first, I would like to thank you, Dave Hudson. I love your personality, and I think the mayor of San Ramon will be very rewarding for our community.
Thank you.
I think my first point is safety for our residents of San Ramon is the most important priority for us here as we talk about the situation. I think number 2 is the peace of mind and the culture that amplifies our diversity and a place that everyone would love to make and raise their family here in our community. But right now in the Trevorrow neighborhood, it's dangerous. It's not a place where I would want to raise a family. I just, amplify what my husband said. And I would just say, please, please, for the mercy of our community, for the mercy of San Ramon, please pass this permit parking for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Next speaker is Mark Stillman. And just a heads up, after James, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, CVA, we will be taking a 10-minute break. So Mark Stillman, you have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, before I call Mark Stillman, for Paul Lynch, if he could call in, we
Yes.
could take public comment by phone if he can't do it via his computer.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Mark Stillman, and we'll try and work it out probably during the breaks, but if he comes in early, we'll take him early. Mark, you're up.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity here. First of all, I'm the president of the Mirabella HOA, and one of the questions that was raised was regards to the criteria requirements for the permit parking area. And one of the things that was not raised is that one of the key criteria is to the determination, identification of possible alternative parking locations for vehicles and non-residents, which are to be displaced in the proposed permit parking area. In hindsight, it looks like the city's initial plan to meet this requirement was to accuse Mirabella of being out of compliance with the 1991 conditions of approval. That seems to be a common theme that is being said by the Trevorrow residents. When we met with the city on December 10th, we afforded them the opportunity to actually point us to where in the document we were out of compliance. Ms. Dute was unable to provide any evidence to show Mirabella was out of compliance. Actually, Mirabella is in compliance, and we actually demonstrated to her that we are in compliance. So that's just a false statement. So then the city went to Plan B. Now Ms. Dute is wrongly stating Mirabella parking policies and drawing false conclusions for an alternative parking location. Mirabella does have 96 guest parking spaces. We do have a minimum requirement of 44. That leaves 52, which we call guest parking spaces, but what she's saying is that those would be the alternative parking location for the non-residents of the Trevorrow area. Well, the surplus of 52 guest parking spaces are already allocated fairly to Mirabella residents amongst the 176 Mirabella dwellings. It's impossible to do one space per home, so it's basically 0.3 months each one is afforded the right to park there. If you look at some of the information that she provided, she said that on average is about 43 spots utilized every day. Well, as Ms. Bold-Bedelia said, right now, there are no guests. We're in COVID-19. And I would argue that all of those 43 spaces that she argued were occupied were Mirabella residents. We do not track whose vehicle is a resident and whose vehicle is a guest. So in our mind, your proposal does not meet your own municipal code and does not make the Trevorrow parking area eligible for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Dinakar Makam. Hope I spelled it right. Why are you laughing at me, Sridhar? Dinakar, you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Trevorrow community for the past 8 years, and I live on the Pearlgrass Court. So the parking situation has gotten worse in the community over the past many years, not only in the last 2019 COVID year. So Mirabella residents parking here has caused nuisance. We consistently find vehicles drive up to the Azalea lane at the entrance of the community, which is zone 2, and just makes the community look tighter and eyesore as you enter into the community. Mirabella residents parking here is not only causing the problems highlighted by other Trevorrow homeowners. In addition, these 40 to 60 cars, they also cause pollution, air and noise by unnecessarily driving up and down and parking the cars in our community. Miravilla residents also park their commercial vehicles in our community. It's not just their cars, there is also commercial vehicles. I've consistently seen 2 Siemens truck parked on Azalea Lane, that is zone 2. As you enter the community, these commercial vehicles, you see them, and commercial vehicles should not be allowed to park in the Trevari community. Miravilla residents should park their cars in their community, in their empty spaces and not in our neighborhood. I request the council to authorize the much needed permit parking in the Trevari community, including zone 2, and also request the council to work with Miravilla to review their CCNRs to allow their residents park in their empty parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I pronounce that name close? Dinakar?
Dinakar, yes.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Steve Breed. You need to unmute.
Yes, I just got the unmute.
Go ahead.
Mayor Hudson, let me hang this up. Mayor Hudson, Vice Mayor Safar, and City Council and staff. First of all, I want to thank staff a lot for all the work they did and doing the research behind this project. I'm asking that you pass the permit request along with working with Maryville to find the additional parking, whether it's at 45 spaces or 50 spaces. I will give you some data. In the month of April or May of last year, Maryville did let their residents park in Maryville because of COVID. It made a massive difference on our street and made a massive difference in parking. I think the real issue is not the Maryville residents want to park over here, but in our district, which is Vice Mayor Safar's district, we have a lot of multi-generation households. And also in Maryville, you have houses with no driveways or minimal driveways. So because of those two driving trends or facts, it forces the Maryville residents to find other places to park. And unfortunately, it's over in our parking space. So I feel that there needs to be a better solution with the Maryville board in opening up more spaces for the residents so it could alleviate this problem. So hopefully that was helpful. It's not that the Maryville neighbors or the Trevari neighbors can't get along. We're just trying to find a mutual solution to get a better quality of life for both residents. And I think if you're a Millville resident, you'd want to live closer to your house. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. And our last speaker before we take a 10-minute break, James CVA. You're up, James.
Hello, this is James Sevier. I'm a Trevari homeowner and resident. Have been a San Ramon resident here for over 17 years. Lived in the Trevari neighborhood that entire time. I appreciate the chance to speak to the council. When I looked at the council's charter, the reason we have a council is to maintain local control, to help assure the quality of life here in San Ramon for all of our residents, and make sure that we all have equitable opportunity to enjoy the city here. With respect to parking, city councils have many different things they can do. There are parking meters, there are green zones, there are school areas that have permitted parking, or areas where adjacent neighborhoods are encroaching on a neighboring neighborhood where permit parking is implemented. I think that's all appropriate. I think this is not a new problem. Certainly more than 10 years ago, the area east of Zone 1 on Red Willow Road also had a lot of parking. And when the city looked at that, they determined that that was a safety hazard. And now that is no parking during that part of the road. So this is something that's been known both to Trevari and Maryville for many years. The fact that over 92% of Trevari homeowners supported this petition shows what an enduring problem it's been. The fact that Maryville has been aware of this and has chosen to do nothing, it's actually, I think, helpful to speak after the Maryville Homeowners Association president, who, from my view, was somewhat adversarial and confrontational in addressing this problem, that basically saying, force us to be good neighbors. We don't have to. Well, I think that is certainly the job of the city council, to look at how do we enjoy equitable access to these areas. Certainly, if you displace Maryville people out of the Trevari neighborhood, they need to have somewhere to park. Miravia has chosen to block all of their parking only for guests, and those spaces go unused overnight. They're empty. And that is not an appropriate use of, the resources, and the city may not be able to force them to change, but the city also understands that they have those resources available to open up to their homeowners. And so displacing them from Trevarry, where they shouldn't be in the first place, is not a problem. As far as COVID versus pre-COVID, really the major impact would be during the daytime hours when we're not asking for permit parking. It's the overnight parking where we're asking for permit parking. And people tend to be home regardless of whether it's COVID or pre-COVID during those hours. And that's going to alleviate the problem here. The only last thing that I would mention is Zone 2. I agree with others that have spoken that say that that's not as broad a street as Red Willow is, and that including Zone 2 as a permitted parking area would help alleviate some of the safety issues, because with cars continually parked on both sides of the Zone 2 streets, it is very narrow, and it does create more of a safety hazard at that one choke point of access into and out of Trevarry.
Thank you,
And
James. I'm going to cut you off because
you bet.
We're trying to keep it at 3 for everybody. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at actually we'll call it 9:07. The first speaker will be Roberto Martin. Presently, we have, well, we had 9. I think we have 10 more people, and we'll continue this until everyone has their opportunity to speak, and we'll see you at 9:07.
For those in the audience, I will go ahead and put up the phone number. If you're having difficulties logging into Zoom, you can call in by phone for public comment. And on this next slide, you'll be able to see the phone number as well as the webinar ID.
Are we back?
I think one more minute.
Okay. Sticklers. Yeah, we can't do it without Christina. She's got the power. Let me know when, Christina.
You're live, so you can start when the.
Okay, we are back in session. This is item 13.3. What are we calling this? This is for the permit parking request. And we've heard from 12 people already. We have 8 more showing. I don't see anybody else jumping in. So our first speaker will be Roberto Martin. Roberto, can you jump in and unmute?
Hi, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've lived here, me and my wife have lived here for 20 years.
24 years.
And a couple of comments. We're looking at the hours for permitted parking from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We'd like it to be from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. That will take care of the street sweeping and also the traffic around work and school hours. That's my main comment in here. I would like the entry points to also be permit parking, partly on Fuchsia and Willow and Fuchsia and Red Willow because there's blind spots there. And then finally, I find it laughable that the association is concerned with quality issues when the corner of Fuchsia Lane and Red Willow has not been landscaped properly for 2 years. So association, please take care of your own issues before you point fingers out at people. And also the speeding around here, it's not solely coming from Miravilla. It's also coming from Travari. And we also need to go by our own by rules of Article 4.8 that doesn't allow us to park our commercial vehicles in Travari. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Jared, you're up. Please unmute. You have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to also thank the TAC and Policy Committee for their support. I'd like to go back a couple years ago when Fuchsia Lane was repaved. And that, I think, is the first and last time that that street was just open and beautiful, and I was able to go out with my kids and actually play wiffle ball without the fear of hitting another car. So I certainly look forward to the open space and not worrying about garbage and picking up garbage on the street from other cars. I appreciate the committee support. I'd also like to thank Lisa and PJ, a phenomenal job on your research. And that's all. I really hope that the council approves this permit parking. It's certainly needed and appreciated by everyone here at Travari. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. You get the star of the night. I see that when we went on break, I don't know, Robert Carrick, if you went off and then came back on, but I have Robert and Najid Carrick, if that's correct. Robert, why don't you come up first? And then if we can, if you're on the same Zoom, we'll add Najid at the same time or the next one after that. So Robert, please come in, unmute.
He just lowered his hand.
Okay, good. Najid?
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this issue. We really appreciate it. Robert and I, and he'll get back on. I know he has a few things he wants to say. We've lived here for 23 years. We watched the development, go up from nothing. So would really like to let you know that no street in San Ramon should look like our street. We live on Progress Lane. So in front of our house, we see the parking, and the view from our bedroom is parking on Red Willow. It's awful. It's disgusting. Street sweepers can't get to the cars. I happened to be walking a couple weeks ago and saw the street sweeper truck come through, and they just drove right down the middle of the road because they can't get to the side. So that's a waste of time and a waste of funds. So I wanted to make sure that, something has to happen with that, because Red Willow is disgusting and the streets within Travari are not getting cleaned. I also want to address the fact that when I leave my house in the morning to go on my walks, I feel that people have had this desperate need to find parking overnight, and the parking is just unbelievably awful. Parking in red zones, parking along disability ramps, in front of fire hydrants, and blocking driveways, parked well away from the curbs. It's unbelievably, you wouldn't believe it unless you saw it. We come home, drive up Pearl Grass Lane. We've come home to people parked right in front of our driveway, and we've confronted them. Can you move your car? Oh, it'll just be a minute. It's our driveway. We've come home to cars double parked in front of our driveway, across the street. And the worst of this, just so that you guys know, is this is not just a parking problem. This is a problem that has to do with public car storage. People are storing their cars on our streets. Unbelievable. On our streets in Travari and on Red Willow. Cars are visibly packed with junk. I've seen cobwebs on cars. I've seen flat tires, just dirty. And we need some relief. We need you guys to pass this. It's just, 23 years as a resident of San Ramon, and this is what we have ended up with. Our front of our house, we see junk. At the back of our house, we see junk. And it's just got to stop. And we would really appreciate your vote to pass this temporary parking. Thank you very much.
Nadia. Is Robert there right now? We can.
Let me see. Hold on.
I thought I was picking it
Hand is
up
raised,
quick.
I can allow him to speak.
Okay. And is Paul Lynch coming back in, or do we?
This is Robert. I'm on.
Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, yes, this is Robert Carrick. I live in Progress Lane. Actually, our house backs up to Red Willow, and I'm not going to be redundant and repeat a lot of stuff that's already been said. There's just a couple of points I want to make. Right now, at both 8 p.m. and 9 p.m., I looked out my back window right onto Red Willow. There isn't a space to be found. And actually, just to address some of the questions that came up, I can guarantee you that 95% of those, if not 100% of those cars, are all Mirabella residents. Also, looking at the cars, a quick glance, I'd say at least 8 of those cars have been parked there in excess of a week, probably since New Year's. And this isn't a traffic enforcement call, so I'm not going to make comment on that. I would like to request, though, if you guys are just going to not permit Zone 2, the Azalea entrance, I'd ask that you be sure to mark designated parking zones. Otherwise, what will end up happening, because we've seen it in the past, you'll have like 7 or 8 cars parked back to back, parked, sort of kind of tangential to the curve. And then they'll be taking it straight to the limit of where the parking zone starts. So I don't necessarily think leaving that area open is going to alleviate the parking issues that we have right now. Also, I want to just make a quick comment in regards to COVID. When I'm not sheltered in place, I work in the city, so I'm running around. I run quite frequently, and I circle around both Mirabella and Travari, so I'm pretty confident and familiar with the cars that are parked here. I can guarantee you that at 4 a.m., which is the time that I run, that the parking enforcement that Mirabella does the cars that come through to essentially check the parking spaces. I can tell you for a fact that if there's 5 cars parked in every single of the 90 some odd spaces in Miravilla, I'd be shocked. What typically has happened before COVID and before this investigations went on that were very well done by PJ, what they'll do is they'll wake up, they'll park in Travari, and then once they wake up and they're getting the kids ready to go to school or getting ready to go to work, they'll come pick up their car from Travari, go back and park in the spots. And then during the day, the spaces are available, so they're able to, park there. But overnight, it's a totally different story in Miravilla. So once again, just speaking in support of passing the permit parking for Travari, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Is it Anyuethia? Hope I pronounced that even close. You're up. Please unmute. You have the floor. You have to unmute, Ann.
Hello.
You're up. We hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I've been feeling really heavy-hearted and sad and claustrophobic for over a decade now at this whole parking situation. Our life shouldn't be like this. We shouldn't look out the window and feel sad and see strangers' cars come in and see strangers carrying stuff walking around back and forth. It infringes on our liveliness and our happiness and sense of privacy. People that live on the street, we all know, but then we have double the amount of the people, double the amount of the cars. And just tonight, if you were to ask everyone that's on here, our neighbors that live on Fuchsia, I'm not sure if this happened on any other street. About 40 minutes ago, there was a car, and I think they were very angry. It was a white Mustang. They revved in really fast and revved their engine very loud. My windows were closed. I could hear them. I was texting another neighbor, and she said she felt that this was dangerous. It's harassment. And this happens very often. I watch TV and I hear this going on. I hear loud music. I hear angry people. Our streets are narrow to begin with, and these people, they don't know which homes have little kids. This also happens during the daytime, and I just cringe whenever a car speeds around back and forth. And the other day last week, I was logging into Nextdoor app. I work for DVC, so I log in from my computer, from my laptop sometimes, to post some things for DVC on the Nextdoor app, like applications, scholarships, and things like that. And I find myself pausing for the longest time. Have you ever wanted something so bad that you stared at it and stared at it? That page of Nextdoor app, it showed a photograph of about 4 homes, 2 cars being parked, neighbors talking, kids jumping rope. And from the angle that they took the picture, you can see landscape and neighbor's yard from across the street. We haven't had that pleasure. We weren't able to see that. And I really sincerely hope that we will be able to do that. It's also become an embarrassment because my friends would always ask, why do you guys have so many cars on the street here? And when I tried to explain, they kind of said, oh, we have friends at Miravilla. They have so much parking over there. Why don't they park on their own street? That's how the world should be. People should park where they live, not come and park at other people's neighborhood. I know that time is running out. I wanted to mention that the parking lot, zone 2, we really need to have that done, please, because otherwise it's still going to be a chaotic problem for us.
Okay, and we did get that message loud and clear. Thank you very much. Sheila Zarakari.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you're up.
All right. I and my husband have been residents and homeowners in the Travari neighborhood since 2008, and I am actually a realtor. And you've heard in other people's comments that we've lost values for our property because of the parking situation. And I just wanted to actually quantify that. I actually ran the numbers before the meeting, so these are very current numbers. I took comparable communities, same types of house, same ages of house, same sizes, and to compare, Portola homeowners actually experienced about a 459% increase in property value since the community started. Altamira experienced 358% increase in property values, but Trevari actually only increased by 310%, which means from a money standpoint, each homeowner in that Trevari neighborhood actually lost about $200,000 at minimum, all the way to about $566,000. And that's the numbers, but in anecdotal proof, every time I bring a buyer to look at a home for sale in my own neighborhood, the main issue and the main concern really is the number of cars parked in our street. So I think I've quantified that for everybody. The $1,100 cost to the city is nothing compared to the values already lost by Trevari residents. But I wanted to make a point also that I was surprised that Zone 2 is not included in the permit parking, because if you don't allow it and there are cars parked right there right now, I don't think any of our fire trucks could ever turn from Red Willow into Azalea, which is the entrance to the community. The streets are so narrow that there shouldn't be any parking on that street, because if we get fire, especially because we're just like a few steps from the hill, come fire season, we're in trouble. So I think when we pass this resolution, Zone 2 should be included, and again, serious consideration for Zone 1 as well, right?
Thank you, Sheila. We have two more speakers. Roberto, let me tell you ahead of time, we don't do second times around. It's 3 minutes. Yeah, you could take that off. Our next speaker is 925-324-0181. You're up. And you have to unmute. The last speaker will be RV. Yes. Okay. Try unmuting. Please introduce yourself.
This is Paul Lynch. Sorry
Hi,
about
Paul.
the problem.
Good. Glad to see you with us.
Yeah, thank you. I live on Pearl Grass Court. I've lived in Trevari for 10 years. I heard the revving engines that they were talking about earlier, and it's familiar to me because I live right next to Azalea Lane, and I hear the revving engines of these people starting up every morning because they don't have consideration for their neighbors. It's really impacted our quality of life, and it is a risk of safety with the crosswalk there at Azalea Lane. There's no visibility for the kids to be able to cross the street. They go racing through our neighborhood looking for that last spot. And then to add insult to injury, when the spot's not big enough, they just hit the car, hit the next car, hit the car, back and forth until they slide into a spot that's too small for their car. I'd strongly like to encourage that Zone 2 be added to it, because one, that's right next to my house, so I hear all the noise late at night of these people coming in. And in my case, there's a fire hydrant in front of my house, so I can't park in front of my house. So I'd like to be able to park next to my house rather than having to park down the street. Like I said, it's just a very dangerous situation for our children, our families, and as people mentioned, it's very unsightly. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker is RV.
Thank you, Mayor Hudson, and members of the City Council. I'm Ramesh Venkatraman, and I've been a homeowner in Miravilla since 2010, and I've been on the board since 2011. And I do agree with much of what is being said. Yes, parking should be equitable. It shouldn't be an eyesore. People shouldn't be parking in driveways or in front of driveways. People shouldn't be parking in red zones. And, just enforce the laws. That's a simple thing. We've done it, during COVID, the early days, people were parking in front of fire hydrants. We got a few cars towed. That stopped. And you know what? I don't care if it's a Miravilla resident or a Travari resident. Just be equitable. You cannot park in dangerous areas when that causes hazards. This should be done. That's one thing, and I believe it should be equitable. To the lady who said, when she looks out of the window overlooking Red Willow, it's an eyesore. There are residents in Miravilla too. When they look out of the window, it's an eyesore because they also have a view of Red Willow. We agree. You know what? If there's a way to enforce it, we should be enforcing it. And you know what? We've said this before, in our meeting with the TAG committee also, and when Ms. Dooth and Ms. Bobadilla, we met with them and we said we're willing to work with the other community. And the thing that we take objection to is this vilifying of the Miravilla board and residents. We really want to work with you, and if there's a solution, we'll work towards that. And to just say that all your problems are caused by Miravilla, that's a stretch. And first of all, to the board members of Travari who've been maintaining that they've tried to reach out to us, one email that can confirm that you've reached out to us would be helpful, because I think the first time we heard from you was August of this year through our HOA manager. And again, I want to keep this short, it's a long night, it's already, way past, it's 9:30 almost. I'll keep it short. We could have resolved this. We could work together. We can still do this. And looks like, the plan's already underway. I don't know, much of it might be moot. But again, we really want to work with the city. We've never had a problem with the city, and we want to work with Travari. Whoever be the owner of the cars who's parking illegally or in a hazardous situation, they should be told. They should be, there's no room for illegal parking. I remember, I think in one of the previous meetings, Shiva Raja said that someone was parking too close. Take a picture, claim insurance, do whatever it takes. One such thing is probably, the word's going to spread and no one is going to repeat it. And again, I'll end with this and give you back your 5 seconds, but thank you.
Thank you, RV. I had a feeling that somehow Nancy Phelps would show up again. Nancy, you're going to be the last attendee to speak. Then we'll ask about any written comments. Nancy Phelps, you have the floor.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know. So I live on Fuchsia Lane. We've lived there about 7 years. We have 2 kids, and pre-COVID, no COVID, whatever. As long as we've lived there, there's been a lot of vehicles parked on the street, and maybe we don't know who they belong to, but let's think logically. We have 2 spots in our driveway, and we have 2 spots that we can park in our garage. That gives us 4 spots. I'd have to have 5 cars to park in the street, which we don't own anyway, right? So yes, it's great that they say we should call the police, et cetera, blah, 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 but it's exhausting. I work full time, I have 2 kids. The easiest way and quickest way to resolve this is to let us, since we've voted and 92% of us would like the parking, to just move forward. There's nothing to work out, right? People should be able to park in front of their house, which the gentleman before me just stated, so he should work on that in his own neighborhood. We're in our neighborhood. We have friends in both neighborhoods. I think it's unfair to the residents in the other neighborhood that they can't park in front of their house. Imagine it's raining, you have to drop all your stuff off. It's a mile from my house to the other end of their apartment complex, or townhouse, I'm sorry. But if you would please vote yes, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any more attendees. How about the written city clerk? How many writtens do we have?
We received a total of 25 written comments for this item.
Okay, those are available to you if you wish to read them, each council member. I am going to point out only one. We're not going to read them, and that was a request from Miravilla Birding and Wild. Respectfully request that the city table any decision. So when we get into discussion, if somebody wants to make a motion to table, you've been requested to do so. If there's no further comments, I don't see it. Let's close public comment. The discussion is before the council. I love the way they want to put vice mayor on the spot right away. You may want to talk to Martin after this, but then if you're not vice mayor, you may not want to talk to him.
Mr. Mayor.
It's before us. Anybody want to jump out there? I won't put Sabina on the spot.
Mayor Hudson, prior to council discussion, staff would still like to make a comment.
Okay. Who's going to take it, PJ or Lisa?
I'll take this one, Mayor Hudson. Thank
Okay.
you. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to explain where the information we shared with you regarding the Maravilla community comes from. The written record the City Council received from the Maravilla HOA over the past few days seems to conflict with direct communication from the Maravilla HOA management. As city staff members, our first point of contact is the HOA management. They are the gatekeepers, if you will, to the HOA board. And this is standard practice with the thousands of requests we receive. So I do have an email from the Maravilla HOA management dated September 3rd, 2020, which I think would help shed some light on some of the discussion that took place today. The email reads, good morning. Attached are the CCNRs and parking rules per your request. There are no parking spaces for residents, only for visitors. Each home has a 2-car garage for the 176 homes. I don't know how many visitor spaces or how many driveways that can have parking. Regards, Scott Slaba, Association Manager. And along with that email, we were also provided with the Maravilla parking rules, which were last revised on May 18th, 2011. And they go over the strict parking policy and state that any vehicles that are parked within one of the 96 parking spaces and are found to be resident vehicles will be towed. We did not originally include this information in our PowerPoint presentation tonight because our focus was the Trevari community and the permit parking, but we do want to share with the council and the community that we have equally reached out to both the Trevari and Maravilla communities. Thank you very much for letting me read this into the record.
Lisa, did you want to add anything?
I have nothing else to add, Mayor Hudson.
Okay, let me bring this back to council where we were. I just want to point out that we were asked early on in the presentation. There are 3 ways to go and we start a minute. I would caution the council about amending on a Tuesday night at this point. The 3 things that we really need to discuss are a temporary parking permit, a permanent parking permit, or no permit. I thought that the questions that Councilmember Perkins brought up were very good, but I really would caution you about getting concerned about the hours for trash because you put it out the night before. And I mean, it's something that we can work out during a temporary if we're going for a temporary. The second thing is, well, when you get old, you forget these things. The other question you asked, the big elephant in the room that we've been asked about. Again, if you're looking at a temporary, I would suggest staying away from factoring in zone, is it zone 2, until you've had the 12-month. I mean, let it run its course. I mean, part of the idea on this thing, if we're going with a temporary, is to work something out with Maravilla. We've had a lot of people speak tonight. I will tell you, starting with Brad, he says, well, nowhere else this happens. Oh yeah, it does. This is an early night compared to what we were doing on Compton. I think that one went for a while. And we get these things. So really what's before us is how you feel about the discussion of those 3 options, if we can confine it to that. Anyone want to take this away from me and be the first to jump in, Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, Dave, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to propose that we change anything. I'm going to ask that staff do some evaluations during the next 12 months regarding a couple of issues. But let me just say, this has been a problem for more than a decade. You and I have been on council for almost 2 decades, or in my case, 2 decades, and you over 2 decades. Yeah, I know. And, you know, it's interesting. I was talking to Ms. Bobadilla the other day. She found some notes from 2007 where she and I and some the Maravilla HOA people met to discuss this issue to see if we could resolve it. And obviously it didn't get completely resolved. And that was in 2007. So bless you all for living with it this long, quite honestly.
If I may, Councilmember Perkins, we met with the Travari HOA in 2007.
Oh, Travari. I guess Maravilla wasn't interested in participating. I received lots of emails from the Travari. I received only a very few from the Maravilla. Interestingly enough, 3 of them were copies of each other. So and no new information there. 92% of Travari residents want this to happen. I went and drove last Saturday at noon. I went and drove the 2 communities. And granted, this is noon, so this isn't exactly the permit time, but at noon, there were about 8 to 10 vacant spaces throughout the Travari area, mostly at the ends of the cul-de-sacs. And there were, I counted 60 empty spaces in Maravilla in the guest parking. 60 empty spaces. I received and read the Maravilla HOA staff documents, and my biggest problem with this, and this is true of most any kind of either disagreement or conflict, is that there was no solution presented by anybody from Maravilla. They don't necessarily recognize the problem because they don't have a parking problem. They've got 60 empty spaces, but they never present a solution. They rebut a lot of what has been said. They complain about staff misrepresenting things, but they never offered a solution. I would like staff, if this motion passes ultimately, I would like staff to do a couple of things in their evaluations sometime during the next 12 months. One is ask the fire department to come around and take a look after the implementation, but have the fire department come and take a look at Zone 2 and evaluate, is that a problem? That's a really valid concern, and it shouldn't take them long to come and look at it and say, nope, we're good, or geez, that is a problem. In any case, take a good look at Zone 2. I also want you to look at Zone 2 for other safety issues. We haven't in the past required permit parking for, like you said, the sides of houses in the past. We did a Fioli Paddington, that whole Fioli Paddington thing. What was that, 5 years ago, 8 years ago? Gosh, it's hard to remember. But the problem was essentially the same. Fioli people had a little alley that they could walk into Paddington and park their cars. And so the people at Paddington couldn't put out the garbage cans and get their street swept and park for parties and all the other things that went with it. Interesting thing, the Fioli HOA did a kind of a survey of people's garages. And if you didn't have space for both your cars, they asked you to correct that. So I just offer that to Maravilla. If you've got people that are living in houses and they're using both their garage spaces for collections of stuff, maybe they should be renting a one of these space rental places and put their cars in their garage. I would like staff to work with and contact our street sweeping team and see if they can schedule Travari before 7 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever works there. I'm not directing you to do something, just seeing if you, if it's possible. I just assume go with the 7 to 7 proposal and move the street sweeping around. And the last thing, see if you can work with police department to offer something that's outside of business hours for getting permits. We ought to be able to do that. There may be a few people that live in Trevarry that, because of the way their business runs, you know, they may be healthcare workers and they don't have a lot of flexibility, you know, those kinds of things. So you might also consider sending the application form that they can fill out before they come pick up their permit. That would ease the time and reduce the time that they're in proximity with some staff. So if they already had their forms filled out with all their, you know, year, make, model, and license plate number of all their vehicles, boom, you're done. That's my comments, and I will be supporting the
Option one.
The 12-month program.
Okay. Vice Mayor, do you want to go now or save it for last?
I can go now.
Okay.
So the one thing that saddens me is the discourse between the two communities, right? They're neighbors living together. So that kind of makes me sad. Obviously, we're here. We should all work together. We should, not point fingers, but try and figure out how we work together. So that's kind of how, you know, I was feeling tonight as I was hearing the comments. Obviously, we're here to solve for a very practical issue, which is parking. And so putting how I'm feeling about this whole issue aside, I would say practically what's been proposed makes a lot of sense to me in terms of this is a 12-month essentially permit that will be evaluated. We've raised our concerns to Lisa and PJ, and they will look at that, including what some of the things that Councilmember Perkins pointed out earlier, including, you know, I mean, Trevarry's in this as much, because if it is their cars, they will have the permits for them. And if there is overflow parking or there is no space for them, for their residents to park, then they will have to figure that out as well. So I think the practical solution is keeping it to those courts, you know, not on the side streets. I was going to add on that, yes, looks like, you know, our the fire department should come and do an evaluation if there is some danger in those streets. The other thing I was going to ask about street sweeping, a lot of cities actually post this is street sweeping time and we want all cars removed at this time. So I don't know, Lisa, that's something we do in the city, or that's something that can be posted so that cars can be removed. And, you know, if people have complaints that the streets haven't been swept, then we can sweep the streets that way. It is, I know parking is one of those things which is, you know, either you love it or hate it, how your neighborhood looks. Neighborhoods, these are mature neighborhoods as well. So I would say kids grow up. You know, you might, when you moved in there, you might have only had 2 cars. You might have 4 cars now, depending on, you know, how many young adults you have in the house, or if your parents have moved in your house. So I think, you know, it is a common sense solution that, you know, staff has proposed. So I would say, let's take a look, let's study this. A year from now, you know, I would love to see a report out of what was observed, what was seen, where the spillover went. I think that is the concern, where the spillover will go, where, you know, where it will end up. If it is Maravilla residents that are in there, then I think the residents will go to their HOA if, you know, if they are unable to park, and the HOA will work with them to make accommodations, hopefully, to make sure their residents are accommodated as well. So I'm hoping the two communities can work together, and we, you know, we don't do as much finger pointing, but, you know, work together. And PJ and Lisa, I really appreciate all the work you guys have done to really, I think, come up with a solution which works for everybody right now. And thank you.
Thank you. Member Veroche, you took your mute off. That's like volunteering.
Thank you. So, one thing I'm sure that both Miravala and Trevari, they have friends in each other community. And I'm sure they understand each other's concerns. I'm glad to hear from RV, from Miravala HOA on this, and in this whole conversation. So just to make sure that I understand the intensity of this issue, I drove around that area a few times to see how it's like the overall issue, the pain that Trevari's residents are explaining. And I do see that all the time, at least every time when I visited those streets, I do see this, especially zone 1 is always packed, and zone like fuchsia as well as azalea, all like every time even the street Pearl Grass Lane and Pearl Grass Court, those lanes are pretty much always filled in. And I drove around within Miravilla also to check it out, and I don't see that kind of parking there. So there are two guiding principles I'm going to utilize in this case. One is safety, and other one is the quality of life. Safety, on safety side, there are two things. One, again, that is road safety as well as public safety. In this case, we are seeing that it can become a road safety issue for both communities, Miravilla as well as Trevari. Somebody parking, walking across, and the kids are playing around, and somebody is like zooming in those streets. That's not a good thing to happen. So on the road safety side, that's one concern I have. And another thing is the public safety. If people don't know who's coming and parking in their streets, that's another issue. Recently, we have seen already some increase in car break-ins as well as stolen cars. So that is going to become a public safety issue. And on top of it, pretty much all the residents, they were concerned about the quality, right? So that's when you cannot have a accessible streets at your own houses, that will become a quality issue. I understand their concern. So thinking all in these guidelines, as well as Scott mentioned some very good points about verifying with us fire lane, as well as we have some time, right? Like PJ Dooth as well as Lisa, they did fantastic job providing us all the stats, details. That's a very good work. It's not like some emotional decision. It's like based on stats. That's what I like about it. So based on this, like in policy committee, I approved the same thing. I would like to go with this temporary permit. And once again, as it is a 1-year study, once we have that information and stats, then we can review it and see how we can work on it, if there is any drawbacks or any improvements that we can do. So hopefully this will give a temporary solution for Trevari's residents.
Okay, thank you, Sridhar. Councilmember Armstrong, we've got 3 looking at option 1. How do you feel about it?
Well, I've also driven around the neighborhoods as well and seen firsthand what the impacts are in those neighborhoods. And we've heard from the community tonight, this has been a long-term issue. Certainly it's been exacerbated by COVID, but this issue has been going on for a while. I do have clear concerns that I'm seeing about quality of life, as Councilmember Veros mentioned, safety and welfare of the residents, particularly in Trevari. And certainly the permitting is not just a one-way thing in terms of the impacts. It impacts Trevari in terms of having to find legal places to park. It also impacts the fact that they have to get sign up for the permitting. So there's a cost there. And it impacts the Miravilla residents in terms of finding alternate places to park or an alternate solution within their own community. I echo the comment by Councilmember Perkins and others to take a look at, or have the fire department take a look at Zone 2 and make sure that it's a there's a safe access and ingress into that site. I particularly liked towards the end there, RV's comment about his willingness to work and find solutions. Certainly enforcement is a part of this, but a willingness for the two communities to come together and find a solution with the assistance of the staff, I think is part of this temporary permitting recommendation as well. And so I believe that if we go with this temporary permit solution, that I think that will go a long way to resolving some of these issues. And I do think, though, that we need to evaluate in several months to make sure that the impacts that we desire are being seen. Thank you.
I think those are good points. I have to tell you that since I first heard that policy was going to look at this, I don't think there have been 5 days that I haven't gone through Travari and Maravilla. I actually stopped and talked to somebody on Christmas, and I looked at this and thought, you know, if we didn't have COVID and somebody wanted to have a family over for Christmas, it was impossible. Every single spot was taken everywhere. The only time I have seen that community, both communities, look as well as staff portrayed them in September was at 1:30 3 or 4 days ago. And it's far worse than what you're seeing in September. And the problem in a nutshell has been stated over and over and over again. It's safety. I tried to go down the road, Pearl Grass, to go make my turn at the corner. Saw the same car parked there 30 days in a row, it seemed like. And an Amazon truck was coming out of there. I almost had to go into somebody's parking driveway just to get out of the way. It's not safe, but it is also unreasonable. Now, I have to correct something that Councilmember Perkins said, only because I met with Maravilla and they showed me slides that they did try to come up with a solution. And when it didn't work, they went back to what you have now and clearly stated that people can park over in Travari because they have a legal right. And that's what's in front of us right now. They will continue to have a legal right unless we institute permit parking. And I couldn't live with myself if I let this continue the way it is, and if it's been going on this way for 10 years. Something's wrong here. Reasonable people can see it. And I think that's where the council's going. So I'm going to support option one. Yes, we take a good look, especially what the fire department's going to say about, is it azalea coming in there into one of the ways into Travari? And we would I wouldn't wait if the fire department says there's something wrong with it now. Get it back before council. We don't even know we don't need to go to advisory committees. We can act on it immediately. I'm hoping that the street sweeping, or that's going to have to be with a sign. I think Savina's spot on with that. But I think maybe with the trash, with the 7 to 7, we'll see. If it doesn't work, that's why you call it temporary. And we'll see where it goes from there. But I really think this is this isn't just picking on one over the other. This is really somewhere in the middle to try and come up with a solution, in my opinion. So I will be supporting option one as stated. And unless there's some more discussion from the council, I would entertain a motion in what we've been talking about.
I'll move the motion.
Okay. And I'm just going to assume that that's adopt resolution 2121, designated Azalea Lane, Fuchsia Lane, Pearl Grass Court as temporary parking permit area R for a 12-month period under the city's residential permit parking program, restricting parking without a valid permit. Do I have a second? Second, Perkins. Motion Veros, second Perkins. Any discussion? Or have we beaten this to death tonight? It sounds like it. Okay. Roll call vote, please. City Clerk.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes. That's a 5-0 vote, and go forth, staff, and we'll see how it works out. And now that I'm on autopilot, I probably can't stop going to Dravari and Maravilla every day. But I'm hoping, as I think that's what I'm hearing from the council, that we're able to work this out over the next 12 months. So good luck. Our next item, I'm sorry, somebody say something?
Thank you, Council.
Okay, our next item is 13.4. That's Resolution 2122. Okay, that's approving some city council appointments that have to be done at a vote. Do we have a staff report from City Clerk Christina Franco?
Yes. So this item does have multiple resolutions. The primary resolution is Resolution 2021-022. It's approving the 2021 City Council liaison appointments to the city committees, the city foundations, the city liaisons, council committees, regional committees, and other agencies and ex officio assignments. The additional resolutions in this item include approving the 2021 council appointments to the Tri-Valley Transportation Council, the Southwest Area Transportation Committee, and the Central Contra Costa Transit Authority Committee. The mayor, with the consent of the city council, shall make the annual city council liaison appointments to all the committees and agencies previously named, as also described in Exhibit 1. The mayor has expressed an interest in making the liaison appointments for 6-month terms instead of the traditional 1-year terms in order to give council members exposure to the various committees. Should the council agree to reduce the terms, such a change should be reflected in any motion to approve the attached resolutions, and the resolution attached to the motion should be amended accordingly. Tonight, we are requesting that any changes be reviewed and made to the 2021 list of council liaison appointments. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Clarifying questions of staff, starting Mr. Perkins.
Yeah, I have just 2 here. The regional committee section, let's see, is that regional committees? Other agencies, excuse me, down at other agencies, it says East Bay Regional Communication System Authority. It has Perkins and Armstrong. The alternates are appointed by the mayor's conference. So Veros cannot be my alternate.
Okay.
So we need to delete that.
Okay. Delete it.
I'm sorry, can you repeat for which committee you cut out on the first part?
Yeah, I'm sorry. East Bay Regional Communication System Authority under other agencies.
Mm-hmm.
The appointments for the primaries and alternates are both made by the mayor's conference.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So while I'm not appointed by this council. I'm appointed by the mayor's conference, and they also appoint the alternates. Kind of like, when you.
God, I can't read my own writing. It's okay. We'll count it.
All right. Second one. Can you put an asterisk by Marin Clean Energy? A single asterisk, because Perkins is the representative and Armstrong is the alternate. They don't need both of us to attend. Those meetings.
I've never attended one.
There are 29 council members and supervisors. You've been to those kind of meetings, Dave. There are 29 of us, and we don't need the alternates most times. Did you want to have an alternate for this Tri-Valley San Joaquin Regional Rail Authority?
I'd asked for it before when I was on it. We don't have it. You're talking about Valley Link or the other one?
Valley Link, Tri-Valley San.
Yeah, Valley Link. I was actually unofficially, but you don't have it when Phil was there.
Right.
And the other one is appointed by CCTA that I'm on, and they're both ones at JPA. But if there's an alternate and you want it, well, congratulations.
I was going to actually recommend Member Armstrong for the alternate on that Valley Link Rail Authority.
Okay, a lot of the reasons why you saw names in there is because we got a real wake-up call this year. 1 week away from everybody was going to be new, it seemed like, on all these things. And, you know, it isn't as easy as it looks to go out here and find out who are these people you've been building networking forever. But if there is, I will check on it. I specifically made a promise to a certain member of that moving to Tennessee that I would stay on it, but we'll check on it. And at that time, I will put it back before the council, because these Tuesday night changes, I always find out afterwards I ticked somebody off. I've had other people ask for it also. So we'll see if there's an alternate, and then I'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay.
I much prefer, you know, we went 9 years without making a lot of changes with Mayor Clarkson. And while you can make a good argument that's not optimum, but I find that a 6-month term for doing these is awfully short. It takes a while to come up to speed on these things and learn what's going on. So I much prefer 1 year. But Dave, if you want to change everything every year.
So let me stop you right there. These are 1 year terms.
Right.
The problem is when I looked at certain things, for example, I'm looking at 3 people here that have a total of 2 years experience. I'm looking at a finance committee, which I specifically wanted Sabina, or I'm trying to set something up so people know ahead of time what they're on, if they want to look at a meeting and see what their obligation is going to be. The 6 months to me for finance makes the most sense because you're going through the entire budget process. So, and the beauty of doing it the way I did is the next year is going to have the vice mayor as the chair, and somebody else is going to be learning with him. One of the problems I have that people need to realize is that these advisory committees aren't making the decisions. They're helping to get it in front of the public and in front of the council to make the decisions transparently. But anyway, that's the way I felt that way. Anyway, anybody else on this? I know, Sabina, you're about ready to put that off mute, and Sridhar, you want to chime in? What do you feel like?
So I just wanted to point out for the League of California Cities East Bay Division, I am now on the board of directors. Do you want to, I know it says all, but do you want to add that to it?
Sure. I mean, put in anybody that wants to get on any of the subcommittees, we'll put it in there too. But it's like Member Perkins was saying, you aren't appointed by me. You're appointed by others, so that's okay too. One of the things you're going to find out, the new people in particular, when I appoint you to something that has a stipend, you're going to be filling out a disclosure every year. Whereas if the mayor's conference does it or league does it, you don't. Have I got that right, Martin? Am I looking at that? Yeah, or Christina. So this is something to try and get new people up to speed and take advantage of the veterans that have been here. And at the same time, if I could put as many alternates as I can, just especially with Zoom, where you have the opportunity to look at it. Martin, you have something to say. You were ready to jump in there. Oh, I thought you had a square next to your name. I'm sorry. The yellow square. Sridhar, you have, or wait a minute.
So one quick question, on the ABAG. So I'm your alternate, right? I'm not ABAG's alternate. Since we have
you
that
are my alternate when they do the general assemblies. And I'm trying to do, if there is Zoom, it was an obvious reason why I did it. I made the nomination for you. I didn't know Cindy Silva was going to jump out there. I mean, it's like Julie Pierce coming back. But it will probably change, and I'll have everybody. I'm trying to think. I don't even remember if Scott's been the ABAG, but I will probably change it each year. All you're really doing is you're the voting member at the General Assembly in the winter and the spring. I believe it is the two of them. And you get an idea of what the Association of Bay Area Governments does, especially now that it's been melded into MTC. But it's a big learning curve, and you never know. I mean, you know, all of a sudden 2-3 years and you're trying to remember the names of the people that you're dealing with, let alone what their responsibility is. But that's, you would be me, unless I couldn't be there, and I'm going to be there anyway because I'm on the executive board. Go ahead.
So the other point I wanted to raise, being, you know, now the newest, oldest council person, is that when I came on, there was a little bit of confusion as an alternate.
Yep.
Because sometimes I showed up, sometimes both Scott and I showed up. There should be some communication, whoever is the primary,
Yes.
to let the other person know that I will be there as well. You're welcome to join.
Yes.
Or if they're not able to make it, I won't be able to make it. Can you join? So I think that communication should exist if it's an
that's a very
alternate
good
rate,
idea.
because
Sridhar,
it helps
you've got your
the other
mute
person to be
unmuted.
prepared.
Scott, did you want to speak again? You're unmuted. Okay. Go ahead, Sridhar.
For that, typically when we have alternate, at least in Parks Commission, like when you are not attending, the primary not attending, primary always communicate with the alternate. If primary is attending, then they never communicate. So if they didn't communicate, means alternate is not attending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's in fact one of the things that I'd like to see, and I don't know how to. For example, Councilmember Perkins is the TVTC chair,
right?
And I think I actually moved. I may have even put Sridhar on it and Sabine on another one so that they can get ideas of what the transportation stuff is going on. And these are Zoom meetings, and you should be able to chime in. I actually attended, I don't know how I got in, the last rail meeting with Phil Alone. And so I always was under the impression that I should have been able to get in at least to hear what's going on, because it's a different world when you go to regional committees. And as much as I can promote doing what Sabina just did, get on League of California Cities, I would do it. I would say every opportunity you can to get on it, do it. It's a different experience. So any other questions?
So if possible, the Dottie Valley Oversight Committee.
Yes.
That's like, I know we are representing whole San Ramon, but then we have district also, where people from the district ask a lot of questions, and a lot of work that is being done right now in Dottie Valley is within my district, and a lot of residents, they keep asking me those questions. So
Sridhar, I have every intention to put you on there. I think
and also they give me a lot of
remember if
feedback
I'm
on
chair.
that. So
And it gets a little, and the problem with Doherty Valley Oversight Committee is we usually only have one meeting in December. But after I check in with whoever it is, trust me, if I could dump the chairmanship on this thing, I'll be looking for 2 volunteers out here that want to be on it. But that's kind of why the June 30th thing is on also. There used to be 2 meetings, one in June and one in December, and it's still really on the books. It's just we always cancel the June meeting. So I will check in and see how we could do it, because I know you want to be on it, and I'm fine with it. Personally, I was trying to get the darn thing eliminated 2 years ago. I don't know what we're doing. Scott, go ahead.
With the annexation of the balance of the property, is there really a need for it?
Well, City Manager Gorton, have we been through this one already? I tried, Scott. I tried. Believe me, I tried. You go, I will refer you to Supervisor Anderson. Is that about right? That's what I thought. Okay. Anyone else before we move this, the 20, where are we at? 22 and move on to the others. Go ahead.
I'll move resolutions 2021-22, 23, 24, and 25.
Can we, Martin, can we do that?
You can do all 4 of them together so long as there are no changes to any of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I did.
Yeah.
I added an asterisk to one of them. Does that?
No, you did. Go ahead. Let's just do 20. I knew that. I forgot what we did.
3.
Let's just do 21, 22 first.
Yeah. Okay. 022.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I can second.
Okay, we have a second from Vice Mayor Zafar. Am I getting closer? Yeah, all right, thanks. Any discussion? Seeing no further discussion, can I have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
And just to be clear, the terms are 1 year.
The terms on these are for the 6 months.
That needs to be mentioned in the motion.
I did not amend the resolution.
Okay, so you just want to leave it at 1 year?
I do.
Okay, do you still second it, Vice Mayor Zafar?
I can second it.
All right.
Do you
Sure,
want
just-
us
just,
to, do you
no,
want us
just
to do
beat up
6
the poor
months?
mayor. He doesn't know anything but that dummy, yeah. I'll
Okay,
just
so
wait until you see the next ones.
so
Go
you
ahead.
want it to be, you are making a counter motion for it to be 6
No.
months? Is that what you're saying,
no.
or you're saying we're
Now,
good with?
I don't want to confuse people. I think this is easier to utilize 2 people that have been here the longest to get as many things in front of people as we can. To me, I set it up so that policy and infrastructure, the chairs would change in 6 months and people will get an idea of different ways to do things. I run meetings just a tad bit different than the prior 2 mayors. But that, if it's comfortable, I'm not going to be obstructionist. So we have a motion and a second. We'll take a look at it next year and see if you feel the same way. Okay. No other discussion? Member City Clerk, you're taking the roll.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now if you want to do the 23, 24, 25.
2021-23, 24, and 25.
Okay, we have a motion for Perkins. Do I have a second?
I can second.
Second, Vice Mayor Zafar. And any discussion? These are pretty automatic. They're made by, anyway. You've heard it all by now. Can I have a roll call vote, City Clerk? Wait a minute. Is there anyone from the public still here? Anyone wish to speak? I don't have any. Is there any written?
I did not
I
receive
didn't think
any
so
written.
either. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes. Okay, we are on to just about the end of the road here. That thing went long. 13.5, election of the mayor pro tem for the city of San Ramon. Staff report, Christina Franco.
The municipal calls for the council to select one of its members as vice mayor for a 1-year term. This meeting tonight qualifies as the first regularly scheduled meeting after the election at which the vice mayor is selected. I'll turn it back to Mayor Hudson to entertain nominations and receive any public comment.
Okay, first, is there any council clarification of questions of staff? Seeing no one up here ready to do it. I do have to do the public comment, I believe, on this. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to it? Any written?
No written.
Seeing none. The public comment is closed. The council discussion, ask the vice mayor and each council member for their comments. You know, I do have one comment, and I've caught myself in a quandary here. I've already talked to Member Perkins to try and figure out exactly what the next line is, or who would be the next vice mayor. And I'm caught in that nominating the way we have always done it, which is the way I'd like to see it continue, takes my district out of it for about, our last vice mayor was Harry Sachs. I would have a real hard time sticking this on Mark Armstrong at his first meeting. But I'm going to kind of put it before Scott, because he, you know, he'll figure it out. Is this something that, no, I'll just do it this way. I nominate Scott Perkins.
I'll second you.
Okay. You see where I'm going with this, Scott?
Well,
I mean, because my
Do you have
next,
an objection?
my next nomination would be Sridhar Barros, as we do our normal rotation.
Well, yes and no.
I mean, in a year.
Right.
Go ahead.
My expectation was that because Sabina, and you did a fabulous job as vice mayor. We don't do 2 in a row. So that takes Sabina off the table.
Yep.
You would have been the next vice mayor, but you're the mayor. So that now leaves me, Sridhar, and Mark. Well, Sridhar and Mark have a cumulative, what, 1 month and 4 hours?
Well, you know, what do you want? I asked him at the candidate thing if he was ready to do this.
Let me finish, Dave. So I think this is appropriate. And I think this is an opportunity for Sridhar and Mark to kind of get their feet into this without having to complicate it with vice mayor duties. There's enough on their plate. We just finished the foundation's liaison committees, regional committees, and all of that. And by the end of this term, hopefully we'll be back meeting in person and going to league meetings and other things like that. So I think this is appropriate. And I welcome the opportunity to be vice mayor for 1 more term. And Sridhar and Mark will each get their opportunities. It just not this year.
Scott, there is a bar.
I'm just telling you that one of the things that we have always done, these are new people, is we've kind of had this rotational thing. It's when you don't appoint a city council member and make them vice mayor in the same day. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But we have to keep in mind that we are districts now, and the last person to be a district, that's all. Keep it in mind. I'm not telling you that moves it up or down, because to me, it is still like a seniority thing, and I don't want to get confrontational next year because I set up the finance committee to be that way till you guys messed it all up this time. But I mean, I will be looking next year for probably nominating Sridhar. Nothing against you, Mark, in my own district, but this is the way we've done it for the 30 years I've been coming to these meetings. Anyway, any other nomination before we close nominations? Is there any attendee? I don't see them. They're not paying attention to me either. No further
I had
comments?
a comment.
Pardon, go ahead.
Oh, did Martin have a comment?
I don't.
No. You said
I was
you had a
going to say
comment. Go
I
ahead.
have a comment.
Yes.
You have to have more followers than me on Facebook.
Oh,
that's the bar. I'm kidding.
Okay, now it's getting late. We have closed the public comment. We have closed nominations. City Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Veros,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Yes, congratulations.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes, and I want to note the smile that comes from the vice mayor when she dumped this job on you. She has earned her, that is, now you know why they are unanimous votes, Sabina. Okay, city manager comments, Mr. Gordon.
Well, in the interest of time, I have just a couple updates on our business assistance program. So I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy City Manager, Stephen Spadowski, to update you on where we're at now that we have some additional funding.
Okay, Stephen, go ahead.
Great. Let me just set up the display here really quick. There we go. So I put together a quick PowerPoint presentation to go over where we're at with the state of the Business Assistance Program. And as you know, the program was created in April of 2020 to provide needs assessment, direct support, and assistance with federal and state COVID grant applications. To date, we've had 57 San Ramon businesses registered, representing over 550 employees. And the first round of the payment protection or the payroll protection program loans resulted in $3,331,900 for program participants. That's when we had about 43 total businesses registered. So tonight, I just wanted to mention a couple opportunities that are coming up, and it includes the second round of PPP loans have been approved by the federal government back in December, and those will be available shortly. And also there is a state small business loan program that was extended as well through the state of California, an additional 500 million. So the total for that program is $1 billion. And we've been advertising that on social media and other channels because the deadline for the application is actually tomorrow. And also with all of our participants that have signed up have received notification of that loan. Oops. The next item that I'd like to update the council on, which will be pertinent to the program, is this Thursday, the president-elect will unveil a new stimulus proposal. And that is rumored to include aid to local governments and small businesses, additional relief. It's actually a long list of items, but that's expected, and we'll get a better view of what's happening on Thursday. And hopefully we'll have more people sign up for the business assistance program to navigate through all of the channels that they can receive assistance. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., we have the Economic Development Advisory Committee. They will receive an update from Townsend Associates, our consultants for the program, regarding the new assistance opportunities and just general assistance available to all businesses in San Ramon. And the EDAC is also in the process of organizing a San Ramon small business event. We don't know what we're exactly calling the event right now, but it will support local businesses over Zoom. Probably have a presentation from our consultants outlining the program, various opportunities, maybe have some representatives from business support services, banking, also our local Chamber of Commerce as well. So that's just a very brief overview. And once again, I like to promote the website whenever I can. It's at sanramon.ca.gov/BAP. Any San Ramon business can apply for the program. And if you are located in San Ramon, we've had a couple outside of the city apply. We connect you with our consultants to receive assistance in applying for all of these state and federal funding options that are out there. So with that, I'll stop my my screen share.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Actually, this is just comments, so we don't have to go to it, but any questions of Steve? I see the
I
look.
had one quick question, Steve. For the businesses that have pulled licenses, do we communicate to them? I mean, is there a way to let them know that this is in place?
So I believe with our new system, we are collecting email addresses. But other than that, we do have we have phone and also mailing information, but that's 2,851 different businesses. So we've been relying mostly on social media and our newsletters and the weekly updates that go out. From time to time, we include the business assistance program in that as well.
Yeah, because last time there were a few businesses that came on late, and I think I eventually sent them over to you, but they were like, oh, we didn't even know this was happening. So I don't know how, you know, if there is a way to kind of be very targeted in our outreach. I know you worked with the Chamber of Commerce, so that's one source. I don't know if there's other ways to do it where these businesses are aware.
Sure, and we have promoted it through the Chamber of Commerce, and that'll be an item to discuss tomorrow at EDAC to get more ideas to make sure that people are aware of this program.
Member Perkins?
If we tried through the property management for each of our shopping centers?
We have not tried that yet, but we can definitely include that on the list.
I cut you off, former Vice Mayor Zafar. Did you have another comment or question?
No, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay, Member Armstrong, Member Veros, not seeing any. Every time you take off your mute, I keep thinking you want to talk. Okay, that concludes the city manager comments. Public comment is open. Now is the time for anyone to address the council on any item not on the agenda tonight. Don't see any attendees. Do we have any other further written comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. City council members and mayors. Now that you're no longer Vice Mayor Zafar, do you have any comments? Or you gotta wait your turn, Scott. You're Vice Mayor now.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think we properly welcomed Councilmember Armstrong. It just kind of just rushed in there. So I really want to extend a proper welcome to you. Welcome to the team. It's really good to have you. Thanks for just jumping in and doing what you did. And we're here for you. So, anytime I've been in your shoes just 2 years ago, but anything I can help with. So welcome to the team. I think we work well together here despite, our different perspectives on things.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
And then congratulations to new Vice Mayor Perkins. Just, it's great to be working with you and congratulate you on that. I think the business, thank you, Stephen, for giving an update on the business assistant program and the number of businesses and people that has helped in San Ramon. I think it's really something that been very effective and impactful. And there's a couple of businesses which reached out to me and I was able to forward them on to you. The next question, which keeps coming up, is now the vaccination, obviously, and who's going to get vaccinated. The city phones have been, the phone lines have been really helpful in sending people over, and Joe's newsletter and some of the things you shared last week with the timeline and everything, that's been very helpful and, kind of guiding people on how the county is planning to roll this out. So it seems like, things are moving forward as far as the vaccine goes. Yes, I wish we could be in person again, and hopefully that'll be soon. It's getting a little old now doing these Zoom meetings and not being able to meet and see everybody. And yeah, so stay healthy, because I'm hearing, more and more people that are actually now testing positive. So just stay safe, everybody. That's all I have.
Thank you. Veteran Council Member Burrows.
Because of Mark, now I became veteran. Yeah, that's cool. Welcome, Mark, to the council. It's great to see you. I'm sure you'll be one of successful and high quality council member that we have on this council. So thank you for jumping in. Like Sabina mentioned, thanks being part of this team. Let's continue to roll out the quality of the services for San Ramon residents. And congratulations, Scott, our new Vice Mayor. So definitely we need a knowledge base like you to continue to guide under Mayor Hudson. And okay, so now Sabina, you may have more time, little bit more time.
Like I said, the social media presence will go down a little.
Okay, time for the rookie. What's up, Mr. Armstrong? Tell us about all your meetings that you've been at.
I've been to a few. Well, thank you for your welcome, and it's truly an honor to be a part of the city council. It's a great group, and we've got a great staff in the city. I'm actually humbled to be a part of this group, and I want to thank you, thank the council for your confidence in me, and I look forward to serving. I want to thank the city manager and some of the staff for some of the conversations I've already had. And I look forward to meeting with the department heads and other staff members as well to get up to speed. Welcome, Scott, or congratulations, Scott, to the vice mayor role. And I'm the new guy, so I'm going to keep it brief and be gone.
Okay. Vice Mayor Perkins.
I haven't had any regional meetings lately. There are a few coming up with the East Bay Regional Communication System Authority and MCE. Those meetings are in the near future, and I'll be reporting back on them at a future meeting. And I want to congratulate Sabina on doing a fabulous job as vice mayor. She really did well, as a quick study to the office. And Mark, I want to welcome you aboard. I know you'll do a fabulous job. And it seems funny that Sridhar is now not the new guy. So the new guy has to bring donuts, though, and I don't know how you're going to manage that, but you're going to have to bring donuts one of these times. So congratulations to everybody on your new positions. Dave, Sabina, Sridhar, Mark, everybody's kind of got something new going here. So
I want to hear more about this donut thing, but the
new guy brings donuts. I mean, that's the way it's been at the lab. That was the way it was in my neighbor's lab. The new guy always brought donuts.
okay, sounds good. I look forward to seeing all of you council members back here if we ever get this remodel done. I mean, I think it's going well. I think it's a great job, smart move to do this. I'm so happy that we did proceed with it and you came up with this idea, fleeced the chief and the fire department to get us in here, all of us. I think it's going to benefit City Hall. I got your email today about the grants from Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We've been working on it for months. The problem is if they put these darn things out after we brought them up. I forgot the guy's name at the fire district where 2401 is a classic place to put these things. It's very difficult, as the chief and I were talking earlier. Well, it's not the chief anymore, city manager. A lot of these grants are really focusing on what we call the AB 617 areas, the disadvantaged, et cetera. But San Ramon has an advantage in that early on, we have been identified with a, what the heck do we call it? Episodic zone. It's part of what we call a community air risk evaluation area where bad air, spot air. We're not up to the AB 617 areas like Richmond or West Oakland, but we do have a leg up on some of the other areas. There are 101 cities in the Bay Area. So we're looking to do what we can when we can. I know that I believe Darlene is going to the meetings to see where we fit in on that. And I did talk to one of the developers that was doing something in an apartment that they have. They went to that same meeting, came away with a $17,000 grant. So charging is going to be extremely important in the futures. I will say we had our first policy committee meeting. The sort of new guy, Council Member Barros and I, and we discussed, we approved the minutes, talked about the COVID thing, and I was a little surprised. Nobody from Trevary or Mirabella is there, so we asked the questions. And that really took over most of the meeting. And for the life of me, I can't even remember what the other item was on policy. But in the future, this is something to keep in mind when we're doing the council member readouts or the mayor readouts, that we make sure that we kind of hit the high points of the infrastructure policy and finance. Just transparency. Can't say it enough for people, because I guarantee you, and Scott, I know you know where I'm coming from. You could say it 15 times, and on the 16th one, you know, why didn't you tell me about that? I'm reminded of Bill Dodd, I think it was, and we had somebody on the air district. 15 different times we brought up SB 375, set aside a separate spot to talk about it. And we're in a meeting with a senator-to-be, Bill Dodd. She goes, we never talk about that at CCTA. And it was like, I want to come unglued. It's just, you can't say it enough. Anyway, that is enough from the mayor's comments. We are adjourned to the next city council meeting, which will be held on January 26, 2021. And thank you for doing a very good job on what is a very short night, Mark Armstrong. We usually go till about 2 in the morning. Good evening.